Too quickly.
No, all good to go.
All good to go. Thank you. So, welcome formally. This is the Overview and Scrutiny Commission on Thursday, the 14th of March. We'll start with agenda item number 1, which is the minutes. We've got 2 sets of minutes to approve. The first set is from the meeting on the 1st of February, pages 6 to 12 in your agenda pack. Are you members happy to approve those minutes? Lovely, thank you very much. And the second set is from the 29th of February, and that is pages 13 to 17. Are you happy to approve those minutes as well? Lovely, thank you very much. Item 2, apologies and substitutes, please, Ruth.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received 3 apologies: Councillor Eagle, Councillor Wilkinson and Councillor Nunn. And we have Councillor Askew in substitution for Councillor Eagle.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Steve, for substituting today. Appreciated. Move on to item 3, Chairman's announcements. I don't have any specific, but just repeat my gratitude to the speakers making yourself available to come along today to brief the committee. Item 4, urgent business. There is none. Item 5, does anybody have any declarations of interest, please? None. Thank you. Item 6, non-members wishing to address the meeting. Welcome, you are very welcome to be here. And then, apologies, Alison, I'm going to swap things round just to suit people's availability today. Item 11, DWP, I gather you guys need to be away by 10:30, so I'm going to take you next, please. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Sorry, at the back. So we've got Jill.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm Jill, and this is my colleague Tracy. So thank you very much for inviting us to come along today to talk about the support that we can offer for our customers who are claiming benefits with us, the Universal Credit, Job Seekers Allowance, Employment Support Allowance.
You might need to move your microphone just a little bit closer, Jill. Just I don't know about anyone else. I was struggling then.
It's not usual that I'm very quiet. Ask my husband, who can definitely tell you
Thank
that.
you.
So we're here today to talk about the various different supports that we can offer to our customers to help them move closer to the labour market and make sure that they're financially secure. There's lots and lots of different things that we have in our toolkit to use for our customers, and it's very, very much based on the individual needs of that customer. So it's probably very difficult for me to pinpoint exactly what we can do, because it's a very reactive service that we have, dependent on the individual needs. So we have a whole host of partners that we also work with to support our customers as well. Tracy, do you want to pick up some of the specialist things that we have?
So we do have specialist roles within each job centre. You know, we have disability employment advisors supporting family employment advisors. We work quite closely with Norfolk County Council and Children's Services. We have subject matter experts in domestic abuse and complex needs. We're able to offer face-to-face interviews to help support people digitally. We're able to make referrals to the library as such to get support for digital access there. We also work very closely with our safeguarding, our leads as well, to try and, to support anybody and do referrals further on and signpost from there. As Jill said, it's very much individual customer-led, so it's whatever that customer needs. We put our customers first at the heart of what we do, and we try and make every contact count as well, so we don't have missed opportunities. If someone mentions something about that might be an annotation towards perhaps domestic abuse as an example, or debt, we don't want to miss that opportunity to be able to offer that support and signpost them as well. We do attend collaboration meetings here at Breckland on a weekly basis, and we bring cases there to support those. We also do quite a lot of upskilling within our community as well. So we upskill our partners on benefit awareness, where we signpost and changes that come in through legislation and guidance. And we also make those contacts via face-to-face, via phone calls, via email, via newsletters. We have posters as well. So we do try and get that contact with everybody wherever we can. And also, we have facilitated trying to get our partners into our job centres to have that face-to-face and direct contact, which we do with Citizens Advice, Christians Against Poverty as an example. And that's something we're going to try and do as we move forward to ensure that we actually capture support for everybody.
Also as well, if we've got people in the community who can't actually come into the offices, into the libraries, we do have a full visiting team as well that can actually go out to their home address and offer support and help in the home address as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, please? Terry?
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. I don't think we've met before. I volunteer in a community shop in Thetford at the Charles Borough Centre. I find myself writing an awful lot of household referral grants. I was very pleased to see that government, having decided to abandon them, actually reinstated them, albeit for 6 months. How much difference do they make in the work you do day to day?
So yeah, I mean, it does. We do have a raft of support at the moment. Obviously, cost of living payments, particularly as well, and there is down the line the whole universal support will be coming through. It's a fairly new concept at the moment, so we haven't got the amount of detail. But obviously, they are looking at the cost of living crisis, everything else that's being faced, fuel poverty, that kind of thing. So there are things in motion at the moment that should be coming through April onwards to obviously help support people moving forward with all of the price rises and everything that we're experiencing at the moment. So yeah, it's very, very much on the agenda.
And how do the household referrals compare to the Norfolk Assistance Grant in terms of usability for you?
I can answer that one. I would say that actually they're pretty on par, to be honest. We work quite closely with Welfare Rights and we do quite a lot of our referrals from them, but I would imagine, to be honest, that they're pretty similar in numbers. Do you feel the same? No. 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 The household support grants are more or less, well, not instantaneous, but within a couple of days, whereas the Norfolk Assistance ones take up to 6 weeks and involve checks of bank accounts, all the rest of it. It feels very cumbersome in comparison.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why obviously they've introduced these payments, is because people, if they're struggling at that time, it's very difficult for them to have to wait 6 weeks to get something through. So, which is why the introduction of those, it's on a much more reactive basis, and the payments come through a lot quicker to obviously sort of try and alleviate any further debt and etc. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, please? Roger?
Thank you for coming along this morning. Just quickly, I get residents who write to me and speak to me about universal credit. It seems to me, from the feedback I'm getting from these residents, is that almost seems like it's set up to be so complicated and cumbersome that they almost feel like they'd be better off just giving up because the system is just too complicated and made too difficult for them. Do you get much feedback on that from people who are coming to you who qualify for universal credit? Is there anything we can do to make the system a bit more user-friendly?
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, the universal credit platform that we work on is an agile platform, so we do absolutely welcome feedback on that. It's always, we have constant improvements on it and it's constantly evolving. So feedback from partners and from individuals is very, very welcome to see if we can do that. Obviously, the whole idea of the system, it is very digital, but we do appreciate that not everybody has either the digital capability or the digital access to be able to do that. So we are able to do claims by telephone, and we've mentioned we have our visiting officers as well. So it is, feedback is very, very welcome. If there's any particular issues, then we'd be happy to take that away and have a look at that for you.
Thank you. Roberts, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Simple question. You work hand in hand with Anglia Revenues Partnership, I believe. Are there any areas of that relationship that cause difficulty?
From my perspective, yes, we do work very, very closely with them. It's a very open dialogue, and I think it works really, really well.
Good. David.
When a person has been when a person's applied for a benefit and they've been turned down for it, do you refer to citizens' advice, or does your visiting service help the person through the appeal? Because it's very, very cumbersome to do the appeal system through the mandatory reconsideration and move onwards.
So yes, if somebody has applied for benefit and they have been turned down for it, obviously they do have the right of appeal. If the appeal isn't successful, then they can take that to tribunal. And what we would normally do is signpost them to Norfolk Community Law. They do a lot of support for them.
Okay, just a quick one from myself. We've heard at previous meetings about the good sort of partnership work between DWP and Breckland Council, so I'm really pleased to hear you reiterate that today. I think it's fair to say that the services that DWP provide now are so much more diverse and, you know, compared to even 5 years ago, I would say, but certainly longer than that. What opportunity is there for you to share with councillors the variety of services that you offer? Because I'm always learning about different things that you guys do. We have people from the community come to us all the time with different problems, and I would like to refer them to the right place. And sometimes that could probably be the DWP, but I don't always know what's available. So do you have a particular process where councillors can make contact, or you know, information that you can share with us to make it easier for us to refer into you?
So I cover this area as an employer and partnership manager, so I guess I would be your contact. Okay. So more than happy to share my contact information. I think Ruth's already got them. So yeah, if there is something that you feel that DWP needs to be involved in to help support, then we're more than happy to do that. That'd be great, and I'll make a note that we do that, because you know, we get people contact us all the time, and we want to make sure that we send them to the right place. So absolutely. Phil.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm the portfolio holder for Finance, Revenues and Benefits here at Breckland, Phil Cowan. Thank you for that presentation. I just want to pick up on some of the language you used, because we're finding that we do things slightly differently, and not just here, as you'll appreciate with ARP too. You described yourselves as a reactive and customer-led service. And what we're trying to do as a council, and what ARP are trying to do, is be more proactive, because the more that we can signpost people before they get into difficulty, it's often easier to resolve some of the problems. So I do appreciate the way DWP is set up, don't get me wrong. And I do appreciate you have to be customer-led, because the customer comes along to you and says, I've got a problem. What I'm keen to understand is what else you might be able to do, and it kind of picks up on the chairman's comment, really, about us as members understanding what your detailed remit is what else you might be able to do as an organisation that enables people very easily and quickly to understand what services you can provide them with, how quickly you can be contacted, where you can be contacted, and equally importantly, where you can't support them, but where others are in a better position to do so. So it's that aspect of not just reacting to a problem that arrives on your desk, but actually being able to think ahead of the game and try and I don't know, promote what DWP does in the wider community. Thank you, Chairman.
I think I totally agree with what you say. We are reactive when we need to be, but I think when I sort of mentioned some of the things I think about before about being the proactiveness, is that we are going out in much better collaboration. So I went to a meeting and arranged a meeting with Citizens Advice yesterday in Durham itself. Went down there and I talked about how we could upskill and support their volunteers to be better support our most vulnerable residents in Breckland, but equally to open up those communications as well. So we're proactive in the sense that we can go out and offer upskilling, offer signposting, give contact details so that somebody knows who to contact, as an example at Durham Job Centre, if they've got a complex case they're working with. And then we're reactive when we need to be, because sometimes we might not have met that customer before. Someone will come in the job centre and say, I'm 16 weeks pregnant, I'm 18, what can I do? We have to be reactive then. But for us to upskill our partners and work in better collaboration, hopefully shortens that journey for somebody, so that if they come to you instead of coming to us, you're able to be upskilled and have knowledge of signposting to say, oh, actually, you could claim universal credit, we should start maternity grant, this is where to look and this is how to find that information. I don't know if you've got...
I think also it's very difficult for us to sort of put into a box, this is what we can offer, because we're talking about people's lives here and they don't, you know, it's not always black and white. We could have a huge grey area in the middle, so it has to be very responsive to those individual needs. So, you know, we can reel off a list of what we can offer, training support, financial support, all that sort of stuff, but it is very, very much driven by the needs of those individual customers and what we have to do in order to support them to move them forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question, Phil. I think that's very pertinent. Appreciate you coming along, and I think I'd like to think this is the start of a conversation. We're looking at later in the agenda forming a task and finish group to review some of the support networks in the district, DWP, Citizen Advice and others. So it may be that if that task and finish group is set up, that they might actually call you in to explore these issues a bit further. So that'd be really useful if you could do that. But thank you very much for coming, and I'll move on to the next item. Feel free to leave. You don't need to stay. Thank you. We'll go back to the agenda as printed then in item 7, which is the portfolio update for the Executive Member for Customer and Corporate Services. Alison, thank you very much for coming. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for asking me along to talk about my portfolio. It's a presentation with PowerPoint slides. Don't worry, there's not 25, 30. There's only about 11 at the most, isn't there, Ruth? How many we got? Not many, is there? Oh, there you go. Bonus. So, OK, so it's split into, what I've asked the officers to do is to split it into current key activities, challenges, and the future. So each area, you will see there's a slide which relates to those 3 topics to try and make things a bit easier. It's quite a diverse portfolio. So we have customer services, HR, which is workforce training and payroll, communications, which is media, PR, marketing and internal comms, organisational development, which is performance risk corporate plan, IT and digital, democratic service and elections. So I'll talk you through my portfolio, but just as an overview, these are the service areas that I cover. So here we go. Customer services, please. Right, she's got it ready. As you can see, this is the first service area, customer services. The customer team lead on some transformational projects in collaboration with services across the council to enable customers to access information and service at their convenience. Most of you have heard about Bobby, and you also have heard about how Bobby is now on the phone. It equates to 6,340 calls per annum, which frees up our officers' support to other customers who need more support, additional complex needs, which is a good thing. Alongside this, the average time spent on the phone with each customer has reduced by 2 minutes, which again is a good thing because people get really fed up if they're hanging on the phone for ages. That's 3 hours per week, less time talking with customers, which frees up to allow them to talk to more important cases. We have developed a new appointment booking system available within our existing Microsoft package, replacing a previous resource-intensive system that has created further efficiencies. We believe 9 hours a month on average on admin tasks, as well as supporting us to offer more appointment types for customers with bespoke information. We are replacing our scan station facility to create easier and greater automation. This should provide £15,000 in saved software costs. And with our new case management system, we now have a service which enables residents and staff to track the progress and resolution of their inquiries with built-in feedback loops. Planning and electoral were the first to go live. Through implementation, it does mean that more queries can be resolved within our customer team and do not need to be handed off to other services. We are identifying opportunities to use the most efficient resource for the council to respond to the inquiry by using this tool to work smarter. Our challenges, right, resourcing is usually a challenge, and it is still. It's a challenge as we seek recruitment for our customer advisor posts. I'm going to pop in on here, what they're saying here, because what I've seen in the customer team is a lot of the people who arrive in customer team then move on to other areas in the council. They get promotion, they've got the skills, they know basically what Breckland does. So this is a good thing. It's not the fact that they're all leaving because they don't like the job. So this has meant project development resource from within the team has been placed back on the phones, resulting in slower development pace than we would have hoped for releasing new processes on phone Bobby. Talked about Bobby, there's some of the stuff going already. In the future, we're talking about future now, we want to continue to use our data to continue to understand the changing needs of our customers to ensure we are developing key processes on phone Bobby based on usage and feedback. We plan to have phone Bobby available to all service areas by the summer, and we will support the digital team with building and testing case management for complaints, freedom of information, SARS and legal service and commercial property. We'll continue to collaborate with service to identify opportunities to work more efficiently and ultimately provide a better customer experience using tools like case management and Bobby for our residents. Thank you, Ruth. Next one, please. The next one I've got is human resources, talking about current key activities. Employment legislation and policy review. Over the last 6 months, we've reviewed 15 policies, procedures and are on track to complete an ambitious scheduled plan of reviewing all policies by the summer of 2024. With employment legislation changing faster than any other legislation in the UK, the team are working hard to ensure that we stay one step ahead by updating our policies to follow best practice guidelines and protect our organisation. Business partnering. The team have also altered their approach to become more proactive in supporting managers in their service delivery through people. Monthly meetings are now taking place between an assigned HR business partner and each service manager to preempt issues and manage performance through supportive HR interventions. Insourcing 2P. Working as part of a wider project team, HR are moving forward at pace to ensure a seamless transfer of planning and building control staff in June in collaboration with Capita HR. You're all aware of the 2P transfer from Capita coming across in, so it's quite a big job. All tasks are currently on track. The team are about to move into phase 2, which includes electing staff reps and starting formal consultation. Challenges, the last one. Health and wellbeing support. We are proud of the way that we support health and wellbeing, which has recently led us to be nominated for a national award recognising our work in this area, which I'll talk more to you about in a moment. However, we've seen an increased need for mental health support in recent years, meaning that there is more for us to do in support of fostering a supportive culture with adequate resources. Recruitment and retention, with budget pressures making it difficult to offer significant annual pay rises, we need to think creatively about how we can improve and continue to improve and promote our overall employment offer so that we can recruit and retain the talent and skills we have to best serve our communities. Finally, the future. Improving and promoting our employment offer remains a priority for the future, with us looking how we can promote and add to the range of attractive, flexible benefits we offer, from flexible working and an attractive pension to holiday sacrifice schemes. And some of you have been to GP just recently will know all about this, and professional development programmes. We have conducted consultation with staff in unison regarding the pay offer for 2024, and now we are in a position to communicate the offer and implement this from April 2024. Remote-enabled working has been a key focus, and we've been working with managers to review our approach and ensure we remain focused on business needs first, while providing flexibility, autonomy and trust in our staff. If we need to make any changes to the way our remote working policies and supporting documents work, this will come forward in Q1 for approval at GP in May. Digital HR. The HR team have been assigned as digital champions to put their digital objectives at the forefront of what they do. Creative issues and creative sessions and ideas have already resulted in a range of quick wins, and they are more focused on reducing unnecessary transactional processes and providing efficient and, where possible, self-serve support for users. Thank you, that's that one. Thank you, Ruth. Communications. You've already had a talk on communications last, I think it was last over in Scrutiny, wasn't it? Yeah. So I don't want to bore you too much, but I'll go through it anyhow. So current key activity, the corporate plan. A key focus for the team has been raising awareness of what the council has achieved in the last 12 months, and how this has benefited our local people. At the same time, they've been preparing a plan for the refreshed corporate plan and how they can bring to life its key priorities and positive impact. Breckland budget. At a time when many people are facing financial challenges, the comms team have played an important role in making sure our customers know how the council is managing public money, working hard to provide value for money and to continue funding the services that make a difference to business and residents. Moving on to challenges, capacity. At January's OSC, members heard about the wide range and volume of the work supported and delivered by the team. Careful planning, therefore, needs to make sure that enough time and resources are being focused on the right priorities to bring the maximum impact. I think you'll all agree this is a thing that when we've got only a certain amount of staff, we have to make sure that we pick up the real top topics. The future, communications campaign plan. To make use of our comms resource and expertise, the team are working on a campaign plan for the coming year and beyond, which will promote the council's work and the services and support it offers, highlighting the positive impact this activity is having on local residents and businesses. Next one, please. Organisational development and performance. Okay. Performance culture, current key activity. Following a new suite of performance indicators last April, performance is strong, and our work around developing a performance culture continues. This is making good progress. Organisational development. Our role here is to support and develop our staff the best it can be and perform at their best for the benefit of our residents and businesses. Our OD and people strategy sets out our priorities of how we do that, and we've already completed over 80 projects and activities focused around learning and development activity, health and well-being, talent attraction and retention, culture and leadership. We are pleased to say that in the last few weeks we have been selected as finalists in the Public Sector People Management Association Management Awards for the Best Health and Wellbeing Programme, and secondly for the Best Talent Development Programme. We were up against county and city councils, so we are so delighted to have been recognised. Challenges. While collecting a comprehensive set of data for all our services has been a challenge previously for a variety of business reasons, we now have almost a year of solid data, meaning we can really start focusing on deep dives into data, using predictive analytics to ensure that we have effective decision making within our services. Future, business transformation. The team is continuing to work with services to see how they can do things better for the benefit of residents and for service efficiencies. Recent savings have come from improvement to the customer appointments process, reducing staff training from 18 months to 3 months, and work is in train over around how our communities and housing teams can work more collaboratively for the benefit of our residents. The corporate plan. During the year, the team monitor progress of the corporate plan, ensuring we are delivering against our priorities. As we move to a new financial year, the team will be shortly communicating the Council's annual achievements as well as launching the refreshed corporate plan for 2024 to 2028. I think we've got about another 2 or 3. I'm telling if anybody's got any questions. I don't mind taking them as we go along. Are you okay? All okay? Yeah? Okay, IT and digital. The website project is a... Oh, you did do it. The website project is a priority project currently. We are working with the website content manager, Goss, who is the supplier, to generate some examples which can be shared with our members. We've also started a review period whereby web editors across the council will review their web content to ensure it's up to date and required before migration to the new website. I want to bring a couple of versions of the website to you guys to actually have a look, get your feedback on before we actually progress any further. So it's going to be in a very short time. We also are undertaking a review of the conference equipment in the Anglia room in order to get some technical issues, which most of you are aware of, with the equipment, some of which are getting very old. We're looking at options for a full or partial replacement of the system. We are in the process of delivering a new training platform, which will be initially used to deliver new cyber training and will also be used for a range of IT training for both staff and members. We are currently nearing completion of our 5-year major refresh of core IT infrastructure, including servers and server security hardware. Linked to this, we have transitioned to SIP telephony for all incoming calls, delivering a future-proof service and making a saving in the process. Challenges. Cyber threats. You all know about cyber threats. We continue to see a range of cyber threats, which we are working to train our teams even further to defend against. These include new attack approaches such as artificial intelligence, AI-generated voice changes that are increasingly being used to spoof identities. With a continued transition from on-premise to cloud systems, we are seeing a shift from a primary capital model of expenditure towards a revenue model with a need for budgets to be redistributed accordingly. Moving on to the future, in the near future, with the rapid maturing of generative AI technologies, we are exploring options with Microsoft over how we are best placed to incorporate AI in a safe and ethical way to achieve performance efficiencies internally. For Minute Talking, linked to our AI, we're looking at ways which technology can be used to transcribe meetings and automatically produce minutes and actions for every meeting. And finally, working with teams across the council, we're looking to see whether an organisational-wide strategy around how we collect, analyse and present data and what infrastructure is needed to make this happen effectively. Democratic services, please. Thank you. And last but not least, democratic services. Right, the current key activity, we've got PCC elections underway for the Police and Crime Commissioner, elections being held on the 2nd of May 2024, with the count being held at Durham Leisure Centre on Friday the 3rd of May. We've got the Local Government Boundary Commission for England LGBCE review. The Council submission, as agreed at full Council on the 14th of December, has been forwarded to the LGBCE, and we are expecting a response for our submission very shortly, which will confirm the number of councillors for Breckland from the election of 2027 onwards. A proposed wording pattern will be considered in the Council later this year. Challenges. Election Act 2022 challenges. As part of the implementation of a second wave of challenges to the Elections Act, the team are working through a number of changes that how they manage the process, postal process, proxy and overseas votes. This includes restrictions and sanctions on how many postal votes any one individual can hand into a polling station or Elizabeth House, postal vote applications being received online rather than by post, limits on how many people an individual can act for as a proxy, and broadening the eligibility for overseas voting. Future challenges. Election rights for EU citizens. The team are working through legislation changes which are coming into force on the 7th of May 2024, which mean that in order to vote or to stand for local government elections and police and crime commissioner elections, EU citizens need to meet a specific criteria. And the general election, last but not least, the team are gearing up for the fact that at some point this year there will be a general election. Thank you very much for listening. I know that was a very long one, but there's a lot of important stuff that you need to hear. So thank you. Happy to ask questions. I've got officers here if it's needed.
I was just reading your job title, Customer and Corporate Services. I think you might be selling yourself short there, Alison. You need to add a few things onto that description. But no, genuinely, I think with all of these portfolio updates, it's really useful to actually understand underneath the title the variety and what's involved with them, within the different remits. So thank you for taking us through that. Really interesting. Harry, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Alison. I listened to read every single word that you said, That's why I want to ask a couple of very short questions that you may come back to me on. One was you mentioned the case management system and how people are sort of captured in terms of the detail once they come up with a query, and I'd be interested, particularly going forward, it may fit into one of the task and finish groups, and where that information goes and whether it's going to feature anything like a key performance indicator, like we've dealt with so many things where we've signposted what the outcome was. And then a completely unrelated question is, you mentioned the pay offer and reward and retention, is whether Breckland will consider at any point in the future or keep under review going back to the NJC, the national framework of negotiating, paying conditions in local government, which many councils participate in. Thank you.
First question, Harry, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. Sorry, it's probably a lot wider than just going. And the payoff, I will also take that one. As you know, we've got an independent scheme here. And I will look at what you say on that side of things, get to talk to the officers and see where we are. That was quite interesting because we had local government LGA people come in earlier in the week, and they were talking about systems which map the external the way that works and the way our system works to look on comparison. So I will definitely be looking at in the next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Very thorough report, Alison. I note that under recruitment, retention and promotion of the organisation, you have a significant presence on LinkedIn. That's something that members have never been told, you come across by accident, but I do think it puts the council in a good light and is an effective means for advertising jobs, etc.
Just thank you for that. Thanks. That's good. Good point.
Thank you. I've got Terry, then Linda, please.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding your chatbot, all the research suggests that chatbots can be alienating, particularly for people who are, the older you get, the more alienated people get, and also those from lower socio-economic backgrounds. So have you done any research on the effectiveness of your chatbot and the sort of people who are taking up using it? Thank you.
I can help on that. Actually, I'm going to disagree with you on the first point you said. You said about it alienates. Sorry.
I've got the research here.
Yeah, that's all right, but I've seen some that perhaps says the opposite, and this is where sometimes when different studies are made, they come up with different answers. So we're probably both right on that side. I personally think that it can cause issues for some people. I agree with that. We've just started, as you know, our Bobby on the phone, and we're keeping a very, very strong eye on what feedback we're getting in, what people are putting the phone down when they're talking to the voice. The voice is quite a friendly voice, I will say. I changed from the robot voice to a very friendly voice, which has helped, I'm sure. And I think that the thing is, it's going to help some people deal with their inquiries 24 hours a day quite nicely. It's not going to suit everybody. We all know that at the end of the day. So I think we've just got to keep an eye on what stats are coming back and look what it means for going forward. It's as simple as that. But I would like to stress that there's always a person on the end of the phone doing normal working hours, which is really important. We're not cutting out the staff, so you've got to talk to a robotic voice all the time. So, all right.
So what's the research you've done so far? What's that suggested?
I'm going to be honest, we've only just launched in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and obviously that's too small of a thing to do. I know the team are working really hard. I would expect to have some sort of feedback in the next 3 months, to be fair to the team, because you can't just take 2 or 3 weeks where a lot of people aren't using it.
I think just to help you both out, when we discussed the use of the chatbot at Scrutiny previously, just before it was launched, we agreed that there would be a report, I think, in 6 months' time, back to Scrutiny on how it's going. It might not be 6 months, it might be a bit longer than that, but there certainly was a sort of review built in to see how it was going, which I think is good news. Linda, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on one of the points Alison raised, which is about staff welfare, etc. And just to remind members, especially those that are relatively new to the council with my member development hat on, that many of those services are available to members as well. So there's a mental health hotline, and it's all on the members' pages should people need it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good reminder. Roger, please.
Yeah, thanks for that presentation, Alison. A couple of points I just want to raise. You said that there was an increasing concern regarding staff mental health. Have we identified that there's a specific reason, one reason why that is? Has that happened in tandem with us doing more remote working, because staff are working more remotely and they probably feel a bit more isolated? I'm concerned about that. And the other question I had was regarding the planning portal, the Ocella software that we have as a platform. My understanding is that software is no longer supported. The IT support for that is pretty, well, there's not much of it. I'll leave it there. There's not much of it. And I was told some time ago that the planning department were looking into possible alternatives to transfer the platform across to something that is supported. Can you give us an update on where we are at with that? Because I'd hate for that to fall over and for us not to be able to get it back up and running again, because that's quite an important function of the council.
Thank you. First question is about the mental health of the staff and that. I want to reassure you that the HR team are all over this. Where there's issues of staff having mental concerns, I know they're offered a lot of support and the reasons why looked at and trends are produced. I haven't seen the trends yet, because as you know, I haven't been in the portfolio that long to actually deal with that side of things, but I will be looking at it and I will get back to you on that one and see if there's any link between, because I'm interested in it as well. Planning portal, I haven't got a clue, but I will find out what support, what alternative support there is. But thank you for raising it. Thank you.
Lovely. Any further questions, please? No. Thank you very much, Alison. Really useful overview there, and you attend Scrutiny all the time, so at least you've got your bit today as well. So we'll move on to item 8, which is Citizens Advice Norfolk. We've got Mark Hitchcock here and also Rebecca Hall. Thank you very much for coming along. We've asked for an update and a presentation about Norfolk Citizens Advice and a bit of an overview of what some of the challenges are, current issues. And I know you've prepared a PowerPoint, Mark, which hopefully we can get. Oh, Ruth's already there. Over to you, Mark.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for asking us to come back. It's nice to see everybody. I won't read the whole thing. Hopefully you've all got a copy of it. If I can refer to the slide numbers when I'm giving you the information. But what we try to do on slide 2 there, Ruth, if you just, when you're ready, that one there. On slide 2, we've just tried to summarise some of the impact of the grant. This is, I think, the only council meeting we come to, so formally we should say thank you for the grant, because it makes a huge difference. Hopefully that gives you a sense of the economic impact. The rest of the presentation is really around the people that we're helping. Slide 3 is everything they say, which I'll let you read in your own time. Slide 4 is really around our service. So I suspect many of you know this backwards, but just for anybody that hasn't come across Citizens Advice Service, that hasn't used it before, we are free. We have the highest level of accreditation for advice that's able to have in the country, particularly our charity, Norfolk Citizens Advice, which is one of 245 charities that forms the National Association of Citizens Advice. And we're quite proud of what we achieved, particularly last year in terms of quality assurance. We're independent and impartial, and we're fully confidential, which is why people come back to us and trust us with their most significant issues at the most important times in their lives. Slide 5 is our location, so you get a sense of the scale of our operation across Norfolk. Rebecca, would you just mind saying a few things about where we are in Breckland, in case colleagues can't quite see that?
Okay, so we actually provide a face-to-face service for clients in 7 different locations. So we're obviously in the Dereham office, which is the Assembly Rooms. We have an office we opened in Attleborough. We're in Attleborough Food Bank, we're in Wharton Food Bank. We also deliver at the Swaffham Iceni Centre and the Yorkshire Building Society in Swaffham. And we actually have a debt worker based within this council. And we also, behind all of that, we have a digital team. So clients can also, if they prefer, come to us on email or telephone.
I'm just looking at that chart. We've got, I think, 62 locations in 2023. Some of those are going to drop off because funding is, frankly, becoming quite challenging in the new financial year. But all the locations in Breckland will remain, as far as we know. So, actually, we'll probably see other parts of the county getting less support than Breckland now. Slide 6 tries to give you some headline data around the number of people that we see. I would say that the data that I present to you today is going to be Norfolk Citizens Advice data, unless I tell you otherwise. We can draw in data from across the country, and I do have some information about debt and housing, and I'll tell you that's National Citizens Advice Services. But the data you've got there is just our charity. We're running at about 1,600 people supported this financial year, and you can see a sort of a very simple profile. The quality of our data is amazing and can't be matched. And I would say there's an opportunity there, partly for Scrutiny, if they want to look into more details, if you've got specific questions, but also from a council as a partner. There's more that we could be doing with our data set, and we're happy to talk in a bit more detail about that. If it's okay, Chair, I'll talk a little bit more about issues, but happy to go back and talk about any aspects of the operations later on if that's useful. If you go to slide 7, you can see a very pretty diagram of issues. This is a very top level. The issue that I really want to make sure you're aware of is debt. Just picking up on our DWP colleagues, our second and third issues are benefits. National Citizens Advice Services into Breckland are seeing about 12 to 13 people every day for benefits issues. So we've got an awful lot of referrals in from DWP or because of DWP. There's an awful lot of support there, and it's growing rapidly. It's now in excess of the issues that we saw pre-COVID. But debt is the biggest issue. It's not a Breckland issue, it's a country issue. It's the one that alarms me the most when we look at the data. So tracking a debt issue every 9 minutes just in our charity in Norfolk last year is a major concern. The amount of debt we write off sounds considerable, but the amount of debt we're seeing coming through the door is more worrying. And just doing a quick calculation when we put the slide deck together, average Breckland debt client of £20,000 is quite alarming. Our debt advisor next door could be helping people with £250 worth of debt, which is crippling them. So it's not about the number as much as the number of people that are coming in with debt, but the number or the average amount of debt they're facing is definitely higher than pre-COVID. And then that last slide 8, the modern art installation, is really there to demonstrate partly the fact that we consider the damage of COVID, because you can see the dip there around 2020 when our services really struggled to see people face to face. But it's also there to underline the fact that we're seeing much more alarming concerns that outstrip the pre-COVID numbers. So when we tell you about our figures, we understand how our service leads those figures, and we cater for that accordingly. That lilac line up in the top right is debt. This is Breckland only, and it's Citizens Advice only. The issues that you're seeing there affect those with disabilities, women and 25 to 40-year-olds predominantly. In terms of cost of living issues, generally it's 60% female and 65% those with disabilities and long-term health conditions. It is always the people in the most vulnerable positions and with the least capability of facing the pressures that we're seeing. And the last 2 bullet points connected to health. So in terms of what this is doing on the ground and what this is doing to communities across Breckland. We are making people sicker and we are storing up a long-term health issue. The debt is the issue that I would welcome questions on, a conversation about. I think understanding that and trying to think how we can cater together for the issues that we're seeing would be very good. I would note, of course, that the council funding a debt advisor in the building is unique. North Norfolk District Council have followed your example. We've got, I think, the largest debt team in the voluntary sector in Norfolk, and we're very proud of the quality of the work they do. I'm delighted to be working in partnership with the council. It was a truly original approach, and it makes a difference. Well, we don't see that everywhere, and I think that's probably helping the people of Dereham and the surrounding area particularly. I'd like to say a few words about our housing data, Chair, but would it be a good point to stop and take questions about those slides?
No, if you do that housing bit, and then we'll sort of wrap it up with questions. If I let them ask questions now, they won't stop.
So, just in the round in terms of cost of living and housing data, I've pulled data out in the last few days. Nationally, cost of living is accelerating by 9%. So in the last quarter, citizens advice services across the country saw 9% more cost of living issues than they did the same quarter last year. That's slowing down a bit. It was double figures before Christmas. Norfolk's number this week is 7% growth. So the acceleration is slowing, but it's still accelerating. Looking at the mid-Norfolk constituency, I know I'm slightly outside my my footprints when I say that, but in terms of some of our reporting, we sit at constituency. Mid-Norfolk is running at 26% cost of living increase. That's so alarming, I checked it twice. So particularly around the population centres, Attleborough, Dereham and Warton, there's quite a startling increase in cost of living issues that we're seeing coming through. And those cost of living issues are dominated by every aspect of debt or the work that we do to try and unpick debt, things like benefits, checks and PIP forms. In terms of the underlying debt issues, fuel debt is about 3 times higher than it was 2 years ago in Breckland, but rent arrears are also increasing at around 200% over the last 2 years. And that led me into the housing issues and looking at housing, which I know is an issue for the council. It's been an issue, significant issue that's been talked about in committees and in meetings that we've had in the last 2 years. Our data doesn't show that, because clients will come to us with all the other factors and they will present to you for housing. So when I've had conversations with Steve, I don't think you've got a housing issue if I look at my data. So that's understanding the limitations of the data, but it's also understanding the limitations of how our services are interacting. I think this is maybe the great opportunity we have. Looking at the underlying factors that we're seeing, though, the major increase, there's around a doubling in terms of private sector rented property issues that are coming through us. But those numbers are still remarkably low compared to the issues I know the council's facing around statutory housing. So I think we can work together in terms of trying to help people before they come to the housing office, but also while they're with the housing office and while they're on waiting lists. I think we can do a better job together on that. So that's an offer that we've discussed previously. I don't think that's an offer that we can make in other parts of Norfolk, though. So I would say the council should take some credit for their approach to collaboration. And we look forward to trying to do make some improvements in the kind of areas that we're looking at for housing. I'm happy to drill down a little bit and talk about some of the details there, but I don't know how statty we want to get about it, so maybe I should take questions there.
Yep, no, happy to pause there. Thank you very much for that, Mark. It's quite sobering, isn't it? But also, thank goodness you guys are there doing the work that you do, so thank you. Questions, please. Who'd like to go first? David.
It's not. Part of dealing with debt is income maximisation. Do you have a team to help people with their benefits? So much benefit is unclaimed. around disabilities and everything. Would it help to have a funded place to get more income in for clients who have been turned down for disability benefits?
So I'll answer the bit about the service, and maybe Rebecca can come in on the maximisation of the debt side, because she's the expert. I essentially write lovely emails, but Rebecca is the guts and the running of the system, so she'll tell you about the details of it. There is a universal credit advice support programme funded by Money and Pension Service, which we used to run in Norfolk, and has actually funding's been stripped out, moved to purely online. And the impact of that service, I think, has been reduced as a result. That's now moved regionally as well. So that's where I say national services. It's the kind of services that we call on, particularly in this case from Cambridge, where that's based. So there is a benefit support service. It in no way meets the demand that we're seeing or the challenges of the cases that we're seeing there. I would note that in the last 12 months, we've done more activities for clients than any year previously out of 85 years, and we are nowhere near our record number of clients yet. So the complexity of those cases, and 20% of the clients coming from Breckland are coming to us with benefits issues, is increasing, and managing that through online distant support lines, it really isn't as effective as it should be. In terms of income maximisation and what we do?
So every volunteer and every trained advisor, staff paid advisor, is trained to do benefit advice. So every client that comes through has a check for benefit entitlement. We are noticing a lot of people who don't claim pension credit, so we help them with pension credit. We do personal independence payments, we fill the forms in, we do attendance allowance, we're doing blue badges, and many of our appointments are actually dealing with benefit issues. We're picking up a lot from the DWP where clients are not digitally savvy, so they need to come in and they need to have that handhold and that face-to-face to be able to apply for benefits. So we are seeing that, and we are seeing an increase in people's incomes. So yeah, it would be great to have funded positions where we could actually have somebody who's focused on that, but everybody's trained to do that.
Okay, thank you. Terry, next, please.
Thank you, Chair. You may have heard earlier I was talking about the volunteer work I do in Thetford. We hear the term cost of living crisis bandied about quite a bit, and I feel it's kind of lost its meaning. It is a crisis, and it is very, very real for so many people. Anecdotally, I noticed two things, really, in the stuff I do. One is that the cohort of people in debt, I mean, there's always been people in debt, there's always been people who are struggling. That cohort, and largely, I think those people find methods of dealing with it that they use day to day to cope with it. We now have a huge new cohort of people spreading up into what would traditionally be called the middle classes, who are now sort of not seeing an end to it, not seeing an end to the situation they're in, that don't deal with it. So that's my first point. The second thing I notice now is that what I would have always referred to as the bank of mum and dad has now run dry. Relatives aren't providing that support that their own kin need, because they have no more money to give. And likewise with charities. Charities are now running dry. They don't have the resources to supply the help that people need. They're my anecdotal views, the sort of new cohort of poor people, and also the dissipation of the bank of mum and dad. Would you be able to comment on that? Is that a true view?
So Rebecca comments on because Rebecca's seeing the front line in Deer and Attleborough every week as well, so if she gives you a sense of that, and I'll come back with diatribe about charity finance.
I could have said exactly what you'd said. I agree with you totally. We're seeing a different demographic of clients coming through. We're seeing couples who are both working coming into us and they cannot make ends meet. We are setting up a Norfolk Energy Collaborative to help people with fuel debts, but because they can't meet their basic living costs. So we're more now looking at grants to help people from other places because we go to Norfolk Assistance Scheme that you mentioned earlier, but they can't actually help either. So it's getting harder and harder for people. And we can do budgeting with them, but they've got very little to budget with. So yeah, I totally agree. We are seeing that as well. If you want to add.
Yes, in terms of your first point, there have always been poor people in the country. We were formed in '39 from charity foundations coming together that used to give out a groat or whatever it was, and you signed your name in the book. So there's always poverty, and there always will be in our system. I can't put a number on it, but you started describing it as I would describe it, the quote middle income earners that maybe would never have thought about having to budget each month because there's always money in the bank, are now coming to us as regular clients. So whereas 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, I was on the radio giving out really Dickensian examples of poverty in Norwich, properly Victorian examples. I can also give you examples where we have married couples with mortgages and cars and jobs coming to us with £10,000 unsecured debt, serious mental health issues as a result. Those are people that don't know how to budget partially, but have never had to think about those sorts of things and have been hit by a number of factors in quick succession. The most alarming that should be coming off mortgage deals, because there's still close to 1 million people that are going to come off quite decent deals over the next few months and be pushed into poverty, or to be pushed into deficit budgets in a way that they've never had to before. So I completely agree. I think it's sometimes I feel like I'm misleading Radio Norfolk, because when I go to the pub or Sainsbury's, there's piles of people spending money. I think there is a group of people that you don't see that have not bounced back from the bottom of COVID and economics. There's a large number of people we're seeing that look an awful lot like me and my friends and my family, and I think we're going to see more of them because it's getting worse, not better at the moment. In terms of the charity finance diatribe, amongst chief officers across citizens' advice in the country, this is the worst they've seen it in 15 years. Citizens' advice companies are closing for the first time in 85 years. That is not a good thing. We are essentially the open door to anybody and the safety net. We can't help everybody at the moment. I wouldn't say we are helping everyone, but when citizens' advice starts closing, I think it's a really serious issue. It doesn't mean to say we shouldn't merge or group or partner or collaborate, and we are open to anybody in the room who wants to talk to us about that. But charities in Norfolk are closing. Access in the West has shut. Nobody has replaced them. We've been told about other services that support Breckland and Norwich that are at risk of closure. County Council is talking to major funding programmes across Norfolk with a 28% cut. We understand everybody's budgets are under pressure, but we are at a point where we have to start closing offices and losing staff. Our turnover as a charity is dropping somewhere in the region of 15% next month, and we are still yet to confirm something in the region of 10% of our income from the 1st of April, because funding is on a 12-month basis in many cases. I'm delighted to say that's not the case with your grant, but this is the norm, and it's only going to get harder.
Okay, thank you. Roger, next, please.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the figures are quite stark. Could I just clarify one thing before I ask my second question? When you talk about the increase in cost of living issues in mid-Norfolk, is that a 26% increase on the same figure this time last year?
So it's the increase we've seen in the last 12 weeks compared to the same quarter last year.
And I noticed from the slides that one thing I'm hearing is we heard from DWP that everything's wonderful and they offer all this support. I wish the ladies were still here, to be honest, because it strikes me that, as I said, I get people tell me that they're struggling to navigate DWP when it comes to things like universal credit and what the benefits they're entitled to. So if they're not getting any satisfaction from DWP, they're coming to your door in the hope that you can help them navigate a service that they should be getting from DWP in the first place. So that, to me, seems quite stark and definitely needs to be addressed. But in terms of the figure you had on here for debt, which was the largest thing that you're having to deal with, is it possible to drill down and tell us, on a sort of, if you broke that down into a pie chart, what types of debt? I mean, is it fuel? Is it housing, mortgages, loans? Do we have some sort of sense of what the biggest crisis is that's facing people in debt in Breckland?
So there's the one chart I haven't got to tell you about. We can send that to the committee. I would say that across the piece, it won't be one factor. So what we've seen in the last 2 years with debt is the breadth and the depth of it. So it's affecting everybody, and it's showing up in every possible category of underlying factor that we have. So we've got something like somewhere in the region of 150 underlying factors that we could categorise for debt, and they're all spiking. So it's not one specific thing. I do have a chart that shows me that fuel debt is radically increased. So from around late 20s, early 2021, we were seeing between 50 and 70 people for fuel debt on a monthly basis, and in the last month we saw 160. Rent arrears are gradually growing. They're probably about 100% higher than they were over the same period. Council tax arrears are starting to follow that as well, although I wouldn't stress council tax issues are a major concern, particularly to this body. But if you're interested in that underlying data set just for Breckland, very easy for us to send across to Steve and to distribute.
Yeah, I think that'll be useful.
So the figure for Mid-Norfolk is very interesting at 26%. Do we have a corresponding figure for South West Norfolk, which forms part of Breckland?
I'd like to check it and send it to you. It's much lower. But I think we need to understand and maybe go more localised. I think you'll find Thetford would be much higher than the baseline I'm looking at there at the moment. So if we can send you that information afterwards, that'll be fine. And okay. I'd just say, if anybody's interested in those sorts of queries in the future, very happy to deal with them.
Lovely. Harry, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm afraid, sadly, it's not a surprise to, I think, anybody in the room, what locally or nationally those figures and the trends and the projections. Picking up a little bit on what Roger Atwell just said, I'd find it useful to drill down a bit more in, say, some of those top five, like energy, debt, housing, etc. Challenges that you've identified there, not so much in a pie chart, but also in a pie chart, but also maybe in a bit smaller geographical detail, not by necessarily postcode, but possibly by, market towns, maybe by groupings of wards. And obviously, I think some of your locations obviously allude to that. So that will be one thing. The second thing is, I think you referred to the excellent work that's going on with Breckland already as a partner. You're a partner with the Health and Wellbeing Partnership, and obviously that's across the whole of Norfolk. Alison earlier referred to future challenges, opportunities, and really is there anything that we can do here to amplify your voice as a partner, or anything you might be looking for other partners across the piece, because it's a very complicated picture, as I know Steve James and others will know, in terms of the different agencies that are hopefully working a bit closer together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. This is where I get myself in hot water if I'm not careful. So, okay, so health and wellbeing partnerships, there are, I think, 7 across Norfolk. There are 5 place boards, 6 place boards. I've been operating it in 2 years. I still don't understand it. I don't think it's a governance structure we created with any sense of belief it was going to work. That aside, it comes down to the anchor institutions to make them work. There are health and wellbeing partnerships across the county that we are considering removing ourselves from because of the direction of travel. Breckland is not one of them. And the only difference really is the district council's approach. So Norwich, Breckland, West Norfolk are examples of councils saying, how can we enable greater partnership? How can we enable things to happen rather than how can we do them ourselves? Which is another pointer to the debt that you've brought in and the support you make to us. And I think that's critical. I think if one of our organisations thinks we can do it all, then we're lost. The last time I came to this committee, actually, I was talking about the Health and Wellbeing Partnership, and I think it's still one of the great opportunities for collaboration that you need to look to. It doesn't have to operate in that space. We're allowed to talk to each other outside it as well, but I think that's one of the most important things. I would just encourage the council to maintain that enabling approach and ask how much further can we go together and how much more quickly can we travel, because the numbers that I'm quoting to you are a reduction in health of the people in Breckland. It's going to get worse. We will pay a long and very high price to redress that in the future. The debt numbers are essentially affecting young adults, isolated adults, those with families. You'll see an increase in adverse childhood experience. These are long-term issues, so we have to think long-term and collaborate in a different way. I would congratulate the council for the approach they take, and I just think I would challenge you to challenge us to say, well, what can we do differently going forward? So I think it's a real opportunity that we should keep building on.
Phil, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mark, for that. Apologies for my back being to you. I can see myself on that screen up there. I've got a few points, if I may. So the first one, if I look at your trend analysis, cost of living and debt, that wonderful piece of modern art that you showed us, there are some interesting sort of peaks and troughs there. And I wonder what the correlation was between the significant drop in, it's not just the debt line, but other lines as well, which seem to coincide at what seem to be kind of random times of the year. And then there's a huge spike. So I wonder what it is that causes that significant drop. That's the first point. I know with my portfolio hat on what we are providing CAB, and I'm delighted that we're able to do that, having listened to you as well about others who are not. But I suppose one of the concerns I have about our Breckland residents is that you as an organisation or a Norfolk-based organisation, so and you have suggested during your conversation, you said that actually you're going to keep all the offices in Breckland, which is fine. So is our funding for you going to be ring-fenced so that as a Norfolk CAB, you don't look at trying to use some of the funding that we're giving you to actually offset costs which are falling elsewhere? Another point is that with a different hat on, I actually sit on the joint committee for Anglia Revenues Partnership as a representative for this council. And one of the points that we have been picking up on, I suppose on a regular basis with our ARP colleagues, is that that universal credit is being managed by central government through CAB. And if CAB offices are closing, and if the funding streams are drying up, how can CAB continue to provide the service which they're contracted to provide through central government's contract to deal with CAB? And the final point, it is disappointing in some ways that Norfolk CAB seems to ignore South West Norfolk. and what is the fourth largest town in Norfolk as a county, called Thetford, and actually represents a significant proportion of our residents in Breckland. And it would be very interesting to understand how or if the statistics that you've actually given us today, which are quite frankly startling to say the least, may or may not be affected one way or the other when we plug in the rest of this district into those, and that district being that part of south of Attleborough, really, all the way down to Thetford. So apologies for the sort of convoluted questions, but I think they're points that may well be of interest.
Well, at least one of them was mine. So
I realise that,
on
Terry.
my notes
I didn't
here,
want you to give you the chance of asking that question.
No, that's quite all right.
So
I can tick that one off. Thank you. Which one do you want to take first, Mark?
I had to write those down. I'm sorry, I'm not capable of remembering those many questions. Let's see if we can go through them. There's one I need to ask a bit of a clarification on. So let's leave that at the end. That's the government benefits query. So let's deal with that last, if that's okay. In terms of peaks, there's a number of different reasons for it, and that what we're trying to do is, when we present you with the data, is iron out those service influences. I mean, there's quite a low drop in benefits and debt in December, which is because of Christmas. So, you know, that always hits our numbers. So there's that sort of availability of services. There's also some services going offline. So, for example, if you look back into pre-COVID and early COVID times, we supported a lot more universal credit because we had a team funded to do it. And that funding ceased in 2021. That was probably something like 8-9 staff. So that's a huge resource that we lost because funding stopped from from the government. So there's a variety of different reasons, and obviously the dip around the 20s was COVID. We closed the offices for, I think, 6 to 8 weeks.
We did, and we saw more employment issues then than anything else.
So, but we've had to rebuild it. So the big thing that we try and cater for in these numbers is the fact that we lost 75% of our volunteers. So that really hit the capacity. But when we tell you that numbers have gone up, we're telling you that having considered the impact on our service, and we're nowhere near that level yet. So we're actually doing record numbers, but with a very low level of resource still. In terms of funding, the ring fencing, I think that's a very good question. So all the funding that Breckland gives us is spent in Breckland. Just a little bit more about what we're doing, I suppose. We are in the process of building a kind of a localities model. Previously, we tried to support everything from head office. What we're trying to do now is bring more of our local teams together and to build more resilience. Breckland is a locality in itself. We've invested in another advisor to come in to Dereham and Attleborough office full time. So we're actually probably increasing our investment in the coming year rather than reducing it. A lot of the sites that I said are going to drop off the list next year will relate to health provision, where contracts are ending in Norwich and other parts of the county. So I can reassure you that the funding is not going anywhere else or not helping us grow something somewhere else. Can I go to the Thetford point? I can't tell you what we do, but I'm going to find out. But I reckon we support hundreds of people in Thetford. But I do need to make the point that we're not supposed to cover Thetford. That's Dis and Thetford CAB. So that's a different charity. There is a competition protocol between the 245 citizens' advice organisations across the country that we don't go and deliver the same service in the same place. So they are able to refer to us and we're able to refer to them pretty seamlessly. If you walk into one of our offices, we use the same language, the same terminology, the same quality measures. But actually, if I opened an office in Thetford, there would be uproar and fighting in the streets. So that's the reason that we don't actively deliver there. Having said that, we will support hundreds of people through our debt team, through our energy teams, because we also cover their phone lines as a backup. So if somebody tries to call Dis and Thetford and they can't get through, they'll come to us. So that's how we end up supporting a lot of people with specialist support in Thetford. That said, if there's more we can do, I'm not saying we're close to it, but we'd have to consult with our colleagues from DIS and Thetford first. Can I just ask a bit of a follow-up to the point, maybe I'm misinterpreting, you said that central government is managing benefit support through CAB. Could you just please give me a bit more explanation on that? I can maybe answer the question.
As we've got Lorraine sitting alongside me, ARP, of course, is what we're talking about, and ARP's relationship with benefits and universal credit. And one of the things that we've been talking about at our joint committee, which we have, is the way that universal credit is rolled out through CAB. I mean, you'll explain it better than I can, Lorraine.
Yeah, I think we're talking about that. Sorry. Yeah, talking about the help to claim process. That I think we're waiting to find out who has got that, who's won that bid for the next 2 years. But it's currently that telephone support and digital support for universal credit claimants in the claiming process is provided by CAB.
You need to speak into your microphone, Lorraine, otherwise people won't hear you.
You have to face that way.
Shall I say it again?
If you move the mic a bit closer to you.
Move it closer and speak into it. Mark will just have to look at the back of your head.
I'll start that again. Yeah, we're talking about the help to claim process that currently CAB provide. So that's the provision of support for people who are making a claim for universal credit, telephone assistance, digital assistance, etc. I know that there's currently, we're waiting to find out who has won the bid for the next 2 years to provide that service.
Okay, so again, at the risk of boring everybody silly with governance and structures, so we are Norfolk Citizens Advice, one of the 245. We sign every year to be part of the National Association of Citizens Advice. They do a number of different things, include win large bids, such as help to claim. So that contract's managed through the national charity. We used to deliver, as I said, 9 people giving benefits advice on UC, up to about 21. When MAPS, I think it's MAPS, when DWP ultimately changed the contract, they moved from face-to-face to online. They increased the number of contacts by 50%, so it became a bit of a phone centre. They also said we're not going to fund local face-to-face teams. We're only going to fund regional call centres. And that call centre, at least currently, is being delivered by Cambridge Citizens Advice. So they're supporting the majority of East Anglia with that, I think. In terms of who's going to get that going forward, it won't be us because nobody's asked us to and we've not been allowed to bid. So I suspect it would be a continuation of that service through Cambridge or a similar charity providing that kind of help. Currently, our charity is not funded to deliver benefits advice.
Although saying that we will help a client if they come in and they want to claim universal credit and they can't manage it over the telephone, we will actually sit with them and help them with their claim.
I think the only place that stipulates that we give some benefits advice for the funding we receive would be in the Norfolk County Council grant. So they say generally we'd expect you to do a proportion of benefits, but that's it. So whilst we can refer directly into the help to claim team, it's not something that we can influence, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those questions, Phil. I think that was quite useful. I've got the last person on my list is David, who wants to come back with a second point. But is there anybody who hasn't spoken? You happy? It's been covered? Good. Gordon at the back, please.
Yes, it is just a question that was raised with me this week by a Breckland resident who's not in my ward, I hasten to say, so I will be taking it further anyway. But where does somebody go when your team say they can't help them?
Have you got any more on the case? Because there's an awful lot of places we try and get them some help.
It was debt related, but I'm not going to say any more because it may identify the person.
So generally, the people that we can't help, we can't give legal advice and we don't give medical advice, and you have to be in an appropriate state to be able to take independent advice yourself. Other than that, we can help you if we have the capacity to meet you. In terms of debt, there isn't anything that we would normally refuse somebody to come to us for. So if you want to take our details, we'd be happy to talk to you about the case offline.
Okay, just two further points quickly from myself before we move on. Firstly, I'm obviously really pleased that Breckland's continuing to support you, and I think it's to the council's credit financially. I just wonder, are there any reporting requirements in terms of numbers of people that you support or money brought into the district through support that you report to Breckland that we as a commission might want to sort of track and monitor? I don't want to create work for you, but I think actually it's good for us to know what return we're getting on that investment.
So I provide a brief kind of slide deck to Steve on a quarterly basis. I think sending it to the committee would be fantastic. We can be telling you about the input numbers, which is great, but you need to be asking us about the outcomes and the outputs, and it's still, unfortunately, not the case that many organisations do that, but we can tell you about financial gain. We can tell you about client satisfaction, for example, and those that manage to find a way forward. We could talk about debt relief. We've got quite detailed numbers on that as well. So we could provide a bit of a dashboard, and then if you want to know more, then we could follow up from there.
I think that would be really useful because I see it as an investment, and I think if you're talking about needing greater support from other councils, we need to demonstrate that actually Breckland's getting value for money, and this is what the benefit to us as a district is. And I would like to think that that would help conversations elsewhere. So that might be something to follow up. The second point, and Phil touched upon it, is always seemed odd to me that we have a Norfolk Citizens Advice, but then a corner of Norfolk, which is not Norfolk Citizens Advice. And I can ask this because the next item is Citizens Advice Diss and Thetford, but they're not actually able to be here today because they're not well. Is there, and you can pass this one if you like, but I'm going to ask it anyway, are there opportunities for economies of scale?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's a blunt answer.
15 years ago, there was 600 local Citizens Advice, and now there's 245.
Okay.
I'd say there's about 150 too many, and we've got 12,000 VCSE organisations in Norfolk, which is unmanageable. We don't have a divine right to exist. Nobody else does either, and we need to work together, to group, to merge, and to collaborate. The reason I believe, I'll speak off the top of my head, Chair, because I've only been in 2.5 years, but the most recent merger in our history, I think, was around 2017-18, when we were about to create a single LCA across Norfolk, hence the name, and one partner pulled out at the last minute. So we are open to that. I don't think the future is a proliferation of organisations. It's closer working across sectors as well as within charity. And as I say, we welcome anybody asking us questions or offering us opportunities to do that.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for answering that. I'm going to move on, just to say thank you very much for coming along. And as I mentioned to the folks earlier, we are looking at setting up a task and finish group. So certainly that presentation and the additional information that was requested, that will be a really good sort of data set for the group to be looking at. And appreciate you offering to come back and for us to ask additional questions and get information. But thank you for the work that you do. It is very much appreciated. Thank you. Could you give me an indication, folks, if you want a quick comfort break to get another coffee? I'm seeing some vigorous nodding of heads. So I'm going to pause there, give you a chance to either pop to the loo or get a coffee. If you could be back in 5 minutes, so we'll restart at 25 to, please. Thank you.
I'll be in touch with you. You need to go on Thanks a lot. Well, that's what he said. He was oh yeah.
Realise what might be able to have a bit of vendor again. It's like initiating about. We didn't need to do that. There was a good sorry. I remember going through
Oh. 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 I would let that go then. Yeah. Yeah. Are you okay? I haven't seen your friend just. Yeah. What have you been? Yeah, I went to Scarborough for a week. Which was up and down. I love the car. Pardon? Was the ice cream shop open? It was, but it was freezing, so just lots of dog walking. It was I lost my mother-in-law before Christmas. Yeah. We'd arranged a holiday to take my mother and father-in-law into this place, and it was specifically booked for them like a single floor accommodation. It was going right up until the last minute, and we'd arranged transportation to go to Manchester and pick him up and take him across, but when he was packing on the Sunday, we went on the Monday, when he was packing, he found lots of notes from May, mother-in-law, that she left about all the packing, and he just got just too emotional. It's still really raw at the minute, so he ended up not going, which in some ways it was better because it's not very good on his feet. So we did lots of dog walking and just went off and did our own thing, but it was very emotional for us anyway, but it was sad as well, him not being there, you know, so but we had a good time. But yeah, what about you on your next holiday? Scotland. Where to? In Scotland?
Starting off at Barney Castle the night ago, when you're the night to the crane.
You always do really well, don't you? Yeah.
And then we put the bowl for the
Okay, if you could take your seats, folks, we'll get going again. Okay, so that dealt with item 8, and as I mentioned, item 9, they're not able to be here today, so that takes us straight on to Item 10, which is the Anglia Revenues Partnership. Very pleased to welcome back Lorraine King, Head of Benefits and Council Tax Billing Systems at ARP. And thank you, Lorraine, for sending through some slides in advance, which was really helpful. So hand over to you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me back. I've got Annabelle Hill here with me. She's one of our Billing and Benefits Operations Managers. We're just going to talk to you a little bit. Is that better?
If you could speak as loud as you can, that would be useful.
Yes, I'll try. I'll shout.
Some people who are softly spoken struggle more than others.
Okay, so yeah, we're just going to give a bit of a brief overview, really, of benefits and support that we provide at ARP for residents. Okay, next slide. For any of you who are not sure who we are or what we do, ARP provides statutory revenues and benefits services on behalf of 5 councils, and they're listed on that slide. And we focus on 4 key areas, really, which is council tax, business rates, housing benefit, and council tax support. So looking at benefits, on the next slide, benefits and financial support that we offer. We just mentioned 2 of the main services we provide: housing benefit, council tax support. But in addition to that, we offer financial support through 2 discretionary schemes. They're commonly known as DHP and EHP. And we also administer what's known as a Section 13A payment. Well, we'll talk about a little bit more about all of these on the next few slides. It's worth mentioning, of course, that there's over 40 different council tax discounts and exemptions available that we help customers with. And I'm sure you're very much aware that over the past 4 or 5 years, our teams have been involved in administering several government schemes so that we can provide additional targeted support to our residents. Things like test and trace, energy schemes, council tax hardship and support funds, and more recently we've been involved in the flood relief to provide business rates and council tax discounts. Okay, over to Annabelle.
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk to you in a little bit more detail about some of the financial support available. So we have housing benefit, which we administer on behalf of DWP, and new claims for housing benefit can be made for pensioners and also for working age customers that live in either temporary or supported accommodation. All other working age customers now would need to claim universal credit for their housing costs. We also have council tax support, which is a local scheme. It's means tested, and we have an automatic claim route through universal credit. So where a claim for universal credit is made, we will automatically receive the claim for council tax support. Next slide, please. And then we also have discretionary housing payments, so DHP. That is additional help with housing costs. Residents must be in receipt of housing benefit or the housing element of universal credit. And we can pay DHP as a lump sum award for arrears, for example, or as a regular weekly top-up to help cover the shortfall between the rent and the benefit. We also have Exceptional Hardship Fund, EHP, and that is additional help towards council tax. So residents must be in receipt of council tax support, and that's a weekly top-up that is paid directly to the council tax account. And we have Section 13A payments. Again, that's additional help towards council tax, but it is available to those that are not in receipt of council tax support, but still need additional help. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the claim process. For non-universal credit customers, there is an online claim form for housing benefit and or council tax support and discretionary housing payments. So the links for those claim forms will be included in the slides. We do have telephone assisted claims, Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 5. So we offer a callback service to support anybody that is unable to use online services or to make a claim themselves, to complete that with them over the phone. And then we've got the claim process for universal credit claimants, which is slightly different. As I've mentioned, when a claim for universal credit is made, we will receive the council tax support claim automatically from the DWP. And we also receive monthly income changes reported automatically from the DWP as well. But we do also have online claim forms. So again, the links are included, but we have the housing benefit, discretionary housing payments, and then we have an application to reopen council tax support claim. And that is a shortened form that is available for applicants that fall in and out of entitlement to council tax support but are in receipt of universal credit. And again, we offer telephone assistance and support to residents to complete those forms.
Okay, so I just want to spend a little bit of time explaining how we've simplified our local council tax support scheme for working age customers, because we're really keen to streamline the claim process and improve the overall customer experience and make it as easy and accessible as we can. So over the past few years, we've completely removed the need for a separate claim form for council tax support for anyone claiming universal credit. We use the data that is shared by the DWP with us, and we treat that as a claim form in its own right. Most councils do still insist on that separate claim form. We've also introduced, as Annabelle's just touched on, a shortened reclaim application. So for anyone who falls out of entitlement once their claim's up and running, there's an easier route to ask for that claim to be reopened again. We've made changes to provide more stable awards by ensuring that there's fewer changes made in year to council tax support awards. This is to help residents to plan and budget more efficiently and provide sort of a more consistent payment award for them, so they know where they are each month really. And it also reduces the number of bills that we're printing, posting and sending out. And the way we've done that is we've introduced what's known as a monthly income tolerance. So council tax support awards are only recalculated where the change in income for someone on universal credit is more than £100 a month. We've done other things as well to help reduce customer contacts and the amount of verification required by introducing a fixed rate non-dependent deduction and by removing the addition of assumed income from capital from our assessment. And all these things mean that we can use that data that's already available to us. We don't have to then go out and contact the customer for more information. Just to touch on processing times, our year-to-date average processing times for new claims and changes combined for Breckland are currently 9.36 days for housing benefit and 10.46 days for council tax support. So we have regular quarterly DWP liaison meetings where we talk about our performance, they give us feedback, and at the last one in February, DWP actually noted ARP's really good performance, asked us to thank all the teams that have been involved, and that was across all areas that they measure us in. So our performance really does compare well to regionally and nationally.
I'm just going to talk to you now a little bit more about the DWP data share, which I've touched on earlier. So we receive information from the DWP automatically, around 300,000 records per year. And we currently automate around 95% of the changes that are received and around 35% of the new claims that are received. This does allow us to make decisions quicker and issue decision notices and revise bills within 24 hours. We are always looking to further improve in that area because it does allow us to free up resource so we can concentrate on those more complex and vulnerable customers. Thank you. So I'm just going to talk to you about signposting now. We have the ARP website. We've popped a link for that in the slide. But on our ARP website, we have some financial support advice, so cost of living help and advice, signposting to a benefits eligibility checker, and then local and national support providers. We also have a liaison officer who does a lot of great work around promoting our services and spreading the word about what financial support is available. So we do that through stakeholder events and newsletters, which are quarterly, and also liaison meetings where advice and information is shared with stakeholders, so that can be used to support residents. We also, within those meetings, meet with DWP and Citizens Advice to give them an overview and help them to support customers with claiming discretionary housing payments and raise awareness of that support that's available as well. And then we have a DWP Complex Cases team, so that's where we work really closely with DWP for any more complex cases, any more vulnerable customers that need that support, and we have a joined up approach from the local authority and DWP to make sure we're supporting them.
Okay, talking about joined up support, what else do we do? Well, we're actually currently piloting an idea with the Breckland Communities team. So the idea is that ARP identify vulnerable households through various methods that they contact us, and we provide sort of more earlier supportive intervention by referring them directly to the communities team, who will then facilitate some joined up support rather than us signposting them to a variety and range of sort of external and internal support agencies. The communities team will then make use of their direct links, their housing teams, their CAB, debt advice agencies, and they'll really target the right support for each customer. And not only that, they'll help arrange it. So what we're hoping to see here is that we'll be able to monitor the progress through that process, and we'll be able to understand the outcomes and the levels of engagement. We've also introduced very recently an ARP-wide housing group. So historically we've met with housing leads at each partner individually. We now pull the whole group together. It's a real good opportunity. They share ideas, experience, best practice, look at case studies, and look at different ways that we can promote take-up of our services. Then lastly on there, we also have two customer service working groups called the Customer Strategy Group and Customer Tactics Group. That involves customer service representatives across the whole partnership. They're involved in all of our customer-facing projects. They help us gain that customer feedback and insights, and that helps us raise awareness of the support that is available. And we also participate in countrywide revenues and benefits groups. Another area where we provide early intervention and support is when people miss a payment or start to fall behind with their council tax payments. So we've introduced a programme of soft reminders to provide a supportive approach ahead of any paper reminders going out. So the aim here is to reach out early and help identify those who can't pay rather than won't. And through a series of automated texts, emails and calls, we make that early contact and we offer support. So we found that these soft reminders, yes, they increase the collection, but what they also do is they encourage people to contact us so that we can discuss any concerns they've got. We can signpost them to different debt advice, financial advice. We can help them claim council tax support, and we can look into any discounts or other benefits that they might be entitled to. Next steps following on from this is that we want to extend this approach using text, emails and calls to increase council tax support take-up. So we're currently setting up a process where we'll automatically reach out to those whose council tax support has recently ended due to a change in their income. So after 3 or 6 months of the claim ending, we'll reach out, we'll contact them, and we'll encourage a reclaim if their circumstances have changed. Okay, just a few final thoughts. Just to round things off, I've laid down our priorities in this area here on this slide. Most of them we've already discussed, but you'll notice that last point is around lobbying for wider data sharing opportunities. We have a wide range of information at our fingertips, including lots of vulnerability data. But we're quite restricted on how we can share it and how we can use it, what we can do with it. So we continue to work with several DWP groups and jointly lobby for wider opportunities in that area.
Just a very quick slide here with contact details. So myself and Lorraine's email address and telephone number. If any of you have any queries, please contact us direct. And then also for residents, we have the contact us form and the benefits and council tax phone numbers.
Okay, yeah, I hope you found that useful. It had quite a bit to say in just 10-15 minutes. But we'd just like to say that we're really keen to hear from you as well. So we want to know what more can we do for you, want to understand what you'd like to see from us, or what you'd like to hear about in the future. So please do let us know. And on that note, over to any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Annabelle. Really useful, and I think it ties in quite nicely with the other presentations that we've had today. So sort of seeing all the different aspects together really sort of lays it out quite plainly. Any questions from members, please? Roger, first.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just explain a little bit more about the type of data sharing that you have from DWP. My understanding with universal credit claimants is DWP always have access to the claimant's bank accounts. And I'm just wondering, obviously they're looking at that all the time to see if there's any significant changes. Do they change the benefits, apparently, allegedly, to suit the circumstances? Do they share that information with you? What depth of information do you receive when you say that they notify you of changes?
They notify us.
Just pop your mic on, Lorraine, please.
They notify us of any changes to the household or to the income of the claimant or partner. So if there's been, if the universal credit award has changed, so the amount of universal credit that they receive monthly has changed, they will notify us what that new award is, and that within that they will tell us what the breakdown of that is. But that's the only information they share with us.
So, for instance then, if a universal credit claimant, their income goes up, maybe they've got some part-time work, etc. I think what you're saying is if that goes up, their income goes up, then you would review it and then you would decrease the amount of help and support that you would give. So effectively, whenever they're trying to help themselves out of their situation, you're kind of taking that help away. Would that be correct?
Partially, yes, but they're always better off in the long run. So whatever extra help they get through universal credit, they don't lose that amount through council tax support or housing benefit. They'll lose part of that. But the other thing that we've done that we touched on was introducing the tolerance rule. So we want to be able to provide more stable awards. We want people to know what they have to pay each month. We don't want to be changing it every time the universal credit award changes. So we only re-look at a council tax support award if the universal credit changes by more than £100 a month. So I think we definitely take no action on at least 50% of the changes that we're notified of.
Just one thing that I found quite startling, speaking to residents, that universal credit claimants, actually, if you've got a child that's got a savings account, maybe a grandparent's putting a nominal sum in there every month, that's actually, the child's account is actually taken account of for the universal credit, which I find quite bizarre, really. That does seem quite an invasive system, but I just want to be sure that they're not sharing specific bank details with you guys. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions, please? Yeah, Sam?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Do you find that residents respond to your text messages and emails? And I ask this because there's so many online scams and people like groups that message you. Do our residents actually respond confidently not have concerns that they're scams and stuff? Is it a good percentage? Do you have a good turnaround that come back to you in on those methods?
We have really good reaction to both people paying on those soft reminders and contacting us, and we monitor that monthly, and the results are quite startling. It is very beneficial. But what we did do in the early days, we did have a few people call up, is this real, is it from the council? And from that we've taken feedback, and we continually review what the messaging is and how we make it clear that the message is from the council and providing the right contacts. And we've worked on what part of the information goes out first to reassure customers of what the message is and who it's from.
Okay, that's good. No, don't see anyone else indicate. Just a couple from myself. I didn't know that people can do the exceptional hardship payments and the council tax support applications on the telephone. So it's actually really useful to know that, because I've certainly helped a number of residents, come into the office and on the computer and help them with that. Have you reviewed all of the questions that are being asked to make sure they are questions that have to be asked, not just on there for the sake of it, and also run it through some sort of plain English type system? I found the whole process for the discretionary housing payments and the council tax support incredibly complicated. I really struggled, and I fill these sort of things in on a regular basis, and I basically had to sit and interpret the questions in front of the resident. So I think a lot of people could be doing it online, but it's quite sort of impenetrable. When's the last time we reviewed those processes?
We review them regularly because they're obviously we're governed by regulations which change quite regularly, and our processes and procedures change quite regularly. So we are all constantly reviewing that claim form, and we know there's some more work we could do to simplify it, and we do involve our communications team to make sure that where possible it is in plain English and as clear as possible. But we're definitely looking at reviewing the DHP claim form, and the new claim form is constantly reviewed. We're really keen to get customer feedback. So our customer strategy group is currently looking at sort of customer insights, and we're looking to add some questions on the end of our forms to sort of a star rating and feedback. What could we do more? Which part can need more understanding, etc. So we're keen to get feedback that way, and we also work really closely with the customer service teams themselves, so they actually provide feedback as well, and we do act on that, and we do change things where we can. I understand they are complex forms, and that's one of the reasons why we do offer that telephone assistance. But yeah, we're keen to make them as streamlined, as simplified as possible, and we continue to work on it.
That's good. Certainly I'll be taking away from today that telephone service is available, and I think that's useful that is there. The other point was around take-up of local council tax support particularly, but also the other hardship payments. Do you do any sort of modelling of how many people are likely to be eligible versus how many people actually apply? Are we missing a lot of people that could be accessing local council tax support, or do we just sort of, we have as many that apply and that's good enough? Do we look at how many might be missing?
That's a very good question. We look at our database, so we can tell people who have recently been in. We can look at people who've claimed before, but we don't look at people who haven't claimed before. So we can compare it to the amount of people claiming universal credit to the amount of people who are coming through to us. So there are things we can do, and we are keen to do that, and it's part of this process that we're looking at to try and encourage take-up, which is reaching out to people who have been entitled and no longer entitled to get them back in. But I suppose it's trying to reach those people who never come to us in the first place, and that's the more difficult thing, and I think that's where the work of our liaison officer and reaching out to different groups and making sure that we have generic officers who can offer advice on both benefits and council tax, so when they have them on the phone, trying to encourage that take up. But yeah, statistically, I think it's quite difficult to pull that together.
I appreciate that. My reason for asking is that nearly everybody that comes to me in debt is nearly always in debt with council tax, but if they would have applied or gone through the process, would have been eligible for local council tax support. That's completely anecdotal. It might just be a very small cohort. But if we don't know the difference between how many people are eligible and how many people are actually applying, we don't know the scale of the problem. And if, a bit like Sam's question, if we're texting people and emailing people but they're not applying, we don't know if the methods we're using are working, if we're not hitting the right people. So it's just, I'll leave that one with you. But certainly I find a lot of people who are eligible but haven't accessed the service for whatever reason. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for coming along today, both of you. It's been a really useful conversation. And I'm going to move on to... I'm not going to move on to item 11 because we've dealt with that one. We're going to move on to item 12, which is a slightly different conversation to some of the other ones that we've had today. Very pleased to welcome UK Power Networks. We've got... I'll let you introduce your different roles yourself, but we've got Ian, Michael and Russell. Thank you for coming along and thank you for sitting through the other presentations today. And I believe you have a presentation for us as well about UKPN.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon all. My name is Russell Hunter. I'm the Operations Manager for what we classify as Norwich and Broadland area. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite align with your Breckland Council area, but it impacts a certain segment of your council area. The presentation today has been put together on the back of, obviously, some, we'll call it poor performance of a section of our network feeding Beatley and Gressenhall. And the works were undertaken last year, and the planned works that are going ahead today, gone ahead this year now, and for 2024. So it's just trying to give an insight on where we are from myself from an operational point of view. Ian's under planning, and Michael will give you a little bit more in depth where the business sits or the company sits with regards to customers and how we perform. So if we could slide 2, please. That'd be... Oh, I didn't have the position of the slide. I'll let you take over, Michael.
Thank you. We actually came here in September 2022, so I do recognise a number of you. So apologies, you may have seen a couple of these slides before. So for those of you who don't know about the energy system, we're the distribution network operator. So we take electricity from National Grid. And we take it from the sort of the national infrastructure and then take it to everyone's home and business, basically to their front door where their meter is. We cover around 8.3 million homes and businesses across the east of England, south east and London. And if we can go to the next slide. So just as an indication, so National Grid owns essentially the incredibly large pylons that go across the country. You can see in the green, that's their pylon routes that go from essentially the large generators, the nuclear power plants, the offshore wind farms, and they take it across the country, and then distribution network operators such as UK Power Networks take that electricity from their pylons and then sort of transform it down to each property. And we power everything on a local level, from street lights, electric vehicle charge points, small domestic properties to the skyscrapers in London. There is some, generation that connects to our network. It tends to be smaller scale, so the solar panels on domestic properties' roofs, some smaller scale solar farms, etc., all connect to our network. The larger ones connect directly to the National Grid network. And whoever your energy supplier is, they're going to be essentially using National Grid's pylons and cables down to our cables as well. And they essentially charge customers for the use of those cables along with the cost of the electricity and gas as part of the overall electricity bill. In terms of our network, we have over 189,000 kilometres of cable. Just to put it in perspective, that's enough to wrap around the world 4.5 times, just to give an indication of the cables we have to maintain, as well as million bits of electrical equipment all over the place, from transformers to switchgear to items at substations that we all have to maintain, and obviously that uphold the electricity network. If you can go to the next slide, please. You may know we have the, so when there is a power cut, you can contact the 105 number. It's a free phone telephone number from most landlines and mobile numbers. It works similar to the 101 number, so you call it, it works out where you are and it'll connect you to the network operator that is responsible for that area, which, you know, in this area is UK Power Networks. There's also a range of other methods to get updates on power cuts. So we also have a website that you can use to get information about when the power cut is happening, when we believe we will be able to essentially restore power, and it also gives you other updates like when it's been reported, when the engineers have come to site, so that people can sort of see that progress as things go along. If you can go to the next slide, please. Just before I just hand over to Russell, because we have been talking about fuel poverty and debt advice, which we haven't included in the slides, but UK Power Networks do also have a fuel poverty programme that we support regional county councils, authorities with. We work in partnership with them if they've got a sort of fuel poverty framework. We do also support more local organisations to help with fuel poverty advice. So in years gone by, we've worked with Voluntary Norfolk over fuel poverty advice and support for customers. We are actually in discussions with citizens of the National Citizens Advice Bureau about a tender process we've got for our fuel poverty programme at the moment. And we also do provide, we work with other agencies to provide, sort of literature pamphlets to help fuel poverty, so we can actually distribute. If anyone has libraries, wants books on essentially saving electricity and keeping energy costs down, we can actually deliver those free to anyone if you know of libraries, community centres, warm hubs in your constituency. So, please feel free to drop me an email and we can arrange that to support that. Just as an indication, last year we helped over 1.5 million customers across our network area achieve £6.7 million of financial savings through debt advice and fuel poverty advice through our funding of partners in that respect. So I thought I'd just include that just as it was obviously topical from today's meeting. But I'll hand over to Russell.
Thank you. So this has been the main driver with regards to us being called here today. This is the section of network just highlighted. It's not very clear, and apologies for that. It's red on a black background. Hopefully, I say you've got a little bit more detail in the pack so you can see closer to your eye. The outlined circle, or the outlined yellow line, gives an indication of the feeder and the extent from where it stretches through from Gresson Hall right through to Beatley and various places in between. Timeline on the right doesn't portray me in the best light when we look down it with regards to the activity that we had on this feeder. Various things, not all the same issue, which would tend to be a driver for being more proactive on this one. We had some issues in and around July, which then prompted us to be more proactive as a business. We started looking at it in a bit more detail and started to drive forward what we needed to do in the event to make this network a little bit more secure. Unfortunately, in the process of planning it, we had another sustained outage. We are talking quite long sustained outages. We are talking, say, 14 hours on one occasion, 20 hours on two occasions. Lots of drivers behind it, lots of reasoning behind it. Staff worked hard, I can't fault them. So I'm following this in real time when these are happening in my area. But when we're looking at it, it's difficult access. There's a pinch point bottom left as we look at the picture on here. And it's just beyond Rougham Close, so I don't even need to see the names to be able to tell you where they are. And the problems that were caused were, yes, tree growth, and I know the question's going to be in and around that. And then also, we're looking at also falling trees. And it does cause a lot of problems. It's not just happening in this location. So we are having a lot of problems across the network, primarily because of the wet seasons that we've had. The constant wet is undermining trees, and the root mass of the trees is not being sustained within the ground that it's actually standing in. So we've had quite a few problems. So when we look at this one in particular, so as I said, we had some poor history. We started to put things in place to try and plan to do some proactive works to prevent this from happening. But while we were going through gaining permissions, ecology studies and various things along those sorts of lines, unfortunately we had another incident where, again, due to high winds, we suffered a problem at Rougham Close, and then we thought we'd cleared the issue, went to restore it in the early hours of the morning, only to find that a tree had gone through further down the line to cause us more problems. Again, sustained, it's not good enough from where we stand at the moment, and we needed to do more. We ended up with a planned shutdown back in November. Again, took quite a bit of coordinating. This is what we call a spur within our network, which means it leads to nowhere. We don't have it as predominantly our network would be ringed in, so we can feed it from both directions, or at least feed it from another direction. Unfortunately, with it being a spur, we don't have that capability currently. So we're looking at what we can do to resolve that. But what that meant was, for the planned shutdown, we then had to turn the customers that had been impacted previously off again. We could sustain some on generation, so we fitted generation where we could, swapped people over, held them on generation, turned approximately 130 customers off for the duration of the planned works. But at the end of a long year, it's still not a good position that we find ourselves in, having to turn customers off again, and especially the time of year. So when we look at it, we're pleased with what we've done under the planned work, not pleased with the history that drove to it. This year, we've had 2 named storms that have come through. For our own perspective, we call them exceptional events, when we get certain fault levels. Fortunately, this feeder was not impacted, so we've done something right to prevent it from happening again. I'm not saying never, saying it's too soon to say that it's resolved the issue completely. So we know what we have to do. So we've done some restringing, we've replaced poles, we've cut trees back a long way in a difficult location. But again, it's something that's very high on my radar. And also I do have staff that have also fed off this same feeder. So when I look at it, they know what they need to do to get the lights back on. Is there any questions on this part before we move on?
Roger.
Sorry, Steve.
So thanks very much for coming, and thanks for the reactive work that you've done on the situation out there. So my big concern is, and the question I get asked by a lot of residents is, why haven't you done the proactive maintenance part of it? There were clearly deficiencies in this network location in terms of poles. You said you had to replace poles. I think there was a cable problem. I think there's multiple trees, etc., that you've had to prune back, cut, etc. Breckland is served, most of Breckland is very rural. A lot of overhead lines, which are always going to be prone to weather events. What proactive maintenance regime, so let's just talk about Gresson Hall and Beatley, for instance. What is your regime for regularly going around and inspecting each of those poles and the lines to make sure that you identify any particular problems and address them proactively, rather than my residents having a 20-hour power cut and then you saying there's a problem with the pole? So if you could just answer that one, then I'd like to come back on something else.
When we look at everything that we do with regard to the overhead line network, we fly and survey normally around 18 months to 2 years using a system called LiDAR. That gives us an indication on where we sit with regards to tree ingress and tree proximity of our lines. What it doesn't do is give us how the poles are and the access arrangements and things along those sorts of lines. So LiDAR will give us some indications. From that, we take off what we call high spans and very high spans, risk spans with regard to proximities on how close trees have got. When I mentioned that some of the issues we suffered on this feeder were falling trees, when we look to do proactive works, we will cut 3 to 5 metres clearance either side to try and gain us some clearance on these lines. With regard to this line, it wasn't cut on a proactive basis. We also have monies to spend, and the monies have to be shared, as with all budgets, and it's just how that equates to with the amount of weighting that goes against it. When we look at feeders that we look to cut, it's based on customer numbers, it's based on vulnerable customers that sit within the customer numbers, high spans, medium high spans, and also network performance. So if we've had a bad performing feeder, that pumps it up in hierarchy slightly, but it could be outweighed by the vulnerable customers that are on there or the customer numbers that are impacted. That is how we currently drive our maintenance programme for cutting trees. What we have done this year, it's been noted, so I'll talk about Norwich rather than Gresson Hall and Beatley independently. Our spend on proactive works is now gone up to, well, 3 times what it was. It'll be about £2.4 million this year, just in my area alone, whereas realistically I was spending around about 800,000 in preceding years. When I look at it, my active work budget is around about 0.8 million. So it's gone up quite drastically from where I sit. So that's my reactive works against my proactive works. So when I look at it, we're looking to cut almost 3 times the amount of spans that we have cut in preceding years. There's also another driver from the proactive measure that was being driven by the company on how we structure. Because of the network performance in my own area, I've identified 6 dedicated feeders where we're going to take a different approach. Where I do send people out on foot, we walk all these feeders, we get this full detail, we take back all this information, and we try and cut beyond what would be our normal standard cut. It's called a resilience light cut. We look to cut as much as we can through agreements with the landowners, and then we also look to see what we can do with regard to the risk and eliminate some of the risk of falling trees. We are suffering from ash dieback in numerous locations and various things, which is causing us a problem. But when we look at it, so we're trying to drive 2 different measures. I've got the business planned cut, which is going to be circa about £2 million, and my driver for 6 proactive feeders, and going in my way and trying to prove a point to the business that my direction is going to be the best direction. And for that, I've got another £500,000 to try and spend. So when I look at it, I'm happier with where we're going forward in 2024 than where we were in 2023. The damage that was sustained across Beatley and other sections of my network proves that we need to do something different, we need to do something more. And from that, the company has come forward and given me 3 times the amount of the budget that I did have this time last year. So when we look at it with Beatley, with Gresson Hall and Beatley, we have done some pole changes, we have renewed the wire. It wasn't necessary to do that, but while we were having the power off to cut the trees, it made sense to do a proper job while we were in there. The poles, one did suffer with the falling tree. It put stress on it, and they said it was not in the best condition after it had been stressed. So we changed the pole, we changed the wires. We hope we made it more resilient for anything else that does happen, because it had been solutions to sustained issues in preceding years.
Thanks for that. Sounds great. Is Beatley and Gresson Hall one of the 6 feeders that you're going to spend this money on? You're going to give me an undertaking that is. And then I hear what you're saying about that being a radial. What plans have you got, or can you make that part of the ring to make the whole thing more resilient? Because all the time that's a radial, there is that risk that you're going to have interrupted supply. So have you got the money to do that infrastructure work for me?
On the first point with regard to, is this feeder part of this current year's plan, there is a small amount of work left to do on this feeder, but the majority of the work was completed in 2023 under the shutdown that we had in November and some of the unplanned works that we had prior to that. So when it's not forming part of my dedicated 6 feeders, because I'm looking to do everything from primary to the end, but we do understand we have still got a couple of spans that need to be sorted out, and we're looking to see what we can do using what we classify as a hot glove method to prevent another outage for these customers on this feeder. So it's managing that when we can get into the locations. As you'll appreciate, the locations aren't the best in the world. We've got to get the trees cut. We've got to make it safe, because I'd rather do it on a planned job at 9 o'clock in the morning than have guys turn up at there at 2 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning in the wind and the rain. So from that perspective, it is still on our radar. There is still some more work to do, but it doesn't form part of my 6, but it does form part of the 2.4 million that we've got to spend in 2024. I'll pass you to Ian for that bit.
So yeah, you're stealing my thunder. That's the next slide. So when we came here a couple of years ago, we were just put our business plan into Ofgem for some funding. So we're now in that price control, which runs from 23 to 28. And one of the proposals was what we call high-risk spurs. So we asked for some funding to loop connect in high-risk spurs, and we classified a high-risk spur with more than 250 customers connected to it, or more than 1.4 MVA of transformer capacity. So the investment was more focused on load-related reinforcement and ensuring we had investment in place so that we could pick up the additional load. But as a secondary driver to that, it does improve the resilience of the network. As you say, we've got an alternative feed we can connect people to if there is a fault. So Gresson Hall, I'm pleased to say, is one of the 70 spurs that we've got funding for, and we're moving that priority forward given the events that happened, and we will get that work done this year. So that spur will be effectively loop connected by the end of the year.
Thank you. Did you want to move on to the next slide as well?
Yes, we can move on to the next slide. Yes, so just to give you some confidence that we are proactively invested in the network, I've just put this slide together and just want to talk through a few things that we're doing. So the first thing is the sort of red dots on the plan are strategic investments we're putting in place in certain localities in your area. So Gressing Hall is one of those. We've got several investments. So there's another one in Lexham where we're looking to ring in spurs, as we just talked about. And then the other three are where we look at the fault history of 11 kV feeder, which typically will feed around 1,000 odd customers. And the performance is not quite up to scratch. It's not quite where we would like it to be. So we're looking at investments on those circuits, and there are a wide range of investments we can look at. So, for example, putting additional automated switches or circuit breakers, or installing covered conductors that are less prone to damage from wind-borne debris, such as branches or birds flying into the lines. So there's some specific investments that we're putting into Breckland. And then on the right-hand side, I've bullet pointed some more overall programmes of work that we have funding for within our this price control period. So we mentioned this when we were here a couple of years ago, but there's quite a big investment in terms of load-related reinforcement in areas where there are no mains gas. So we expect load to pick up in those areas when people transfer or electrify their heating, and also when we see more penetration of electricity vehicle charging points. So, as with the high-risk spurs, the primary driver is load-related, but I do expect there to be some performance and resilience improvements in as much as we're putting larger conductors in, which are more robust. We've got a big initiative, a quality of supply initiative. So we're certainly national leaders, if not worldwide leaders, in our automated network control system, which is called APRS, so Automatic Power Restoration System. So we have sensors out on the network with automated circuit breakers and switches, and they will sense a faulty piece of network, and they will rearrange the network, isolate the fault, and then restore all the customers outside of that faulty zone within 3 minutes. And we've got a big investment going into more automation. The vision is to have no more than 300 customers connected between automated switching points, such that in the unlikely event that a fault does occur, we can sectionalise that network down to only 300 customers. So there's a big investment there. Then the other bullet points are investments we're putting in based on the condition of plants. So wood poles, transformers, switchgear and LV plant. So there's a big investment going in this price control period. So just as an example, we're looking over the whole of the east of England to replace circa 50,000 wood poles. So that's the most poles we've ever replaced, based on when we go and inspect the lines, and on a condition-based investment. So hopefully that will give you some confidence that we are taking proactive measures to improve the resilience and the performance of the network. The performance is really quite good. But it's part of the culture of UK Power Networks to continually improve, and that's how we plan to do that. So hopefully that gives you a good summary of what we're doing. So really appreciate you inviting us here today, and welcome any questions.
Lovely. Firstly, I'm really pleased to hear you acknowledge the sort of failures in the past, and I think it's really important that happens, and you've got a plan, it seems, to move forward. So I think that's good news, so as I'm concerned. Roger, did you want to come back on the sort of second aspect there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say how pleased I was to hear that, actually, because when you came here in 2022, you'll recall that I asked you the questions about how you were going to upscale the network to take account of additional loads, electric vehicle charging points and air source heat pumps and that sort of thing as people transition from fossil fuel heating. So I'm really pleased to see that investment, and I do thank you for that. If you want me to, Chairman, I did have a more overarching question about the network and resilience and how customers can contact you guys. One of the things that was very stark when we had all the outages in Beatley and Gressenhall was that the inability of residents to be able to contact UK Power Networks because the mobile phone mast lost power, didn't have any battery backup. You lose your internet, so you've got to, I hear what you're saying about we need to look at the website, and we've also got the issue now where BT are looking to swap everybody over from the good old-fashioned line, and several households have already transitioned to the voice-activated phones, which I'm not a huge fan of, but you can see the problem looming that if there is a power cut, that's why we need the resilience in the network to make sure we don't get these outages. You're always going to get a tree that comes down. You know, that's just nature. You can't help that. But if we've got better proactive maintenance and you're putting this investment in, that gives me more confidence that we will have that resilience in the rural network. I say lots of the villages are serviced by overhead lines, and I'm pleased that you're taking it on board. And for any county councillors here, please, I'd need you to take this on board when you're having discussions with BT, Openreach, about the impacts that their proposed changes have on residents. Because I think the only way you were able to contact and interact with residents, you physically had to send a van round. One of your team had to be on site as an information point in the village so people could walk up to them and get a cup of coffee and and sort of find out more information, which seemed a bit sort of 20th century to me. I don't know how we combat that. I don't know what interaction you can have with mobile phone providers and the masts, and they need uninterruptible power supplies for their, I know it's not your equipment, but you can see the problem. And the final question I had was about compensation. When you have extreme outages like that, the compensation available didn't seem to be fairly distributed. So I've had residents who live in the same street, some that were told they were eligible for compensation and others that weren't. And I just wonder if you could comment on why that would be the case. I mean, is it done on a sort of postcode basis? How do you determine, and with that, the knowledge you have of where the network is down, how they are eligible?
Just on that initially with regard to the comms system, comms does impact us as well. So when we send staff to site, everything we now try to do is in real time, including updates for the customers. Appreciate they can't get them if they've lost their BT or they've lost their internet and those sorts of things. But we are struggling, say, again, in the rural areas, we always tend to be going into these black spots because the masts are down, because we've lost power at those locations. So we are pushing back through our relationship with EE and O2 to try and see how we can improve. We're looking at network coverage for our own phones, which will hopefully have a knock-on effect, see if they can turn the masts up for a better statement to try and make the coverage a little bit better. But again, I say, and it is driving that bit. I think, as you said, the driver's got to be for the key infrastructure suppliers that supply the masts. They need to have a fallback position when they do lose mains, because again, we're a rural network. We're the best one in the world. As we say, we do perform well. There is times when we don't, but when we look at it, say there's always going to be the occasion when we're going to come off supply. There needs to be some, especially when we get storm events. Touch wood, we haven't had any huge major ones lately, but I say when we get storage events, we can look at several, even days at times when we get severely battered. And I say, and they do come round given the nature of the world these days. But I say it's looking at what we've got. But no, when we look at it, we say we're trying to drive the phone connection or the connectivity from our own points. As you say, we put in a customer service vehicle that should turn up with its own Wi-Fi, should turn up with hot drinks, hot food. Okay, then not much to write home about. You're not going to get a star rating against them, but it's trying to accommodate those people that have been without power. We try to be reactive as we can with those. If we do a planned shutdown, again on this occasion, we knew where we were going to be, so we made it public where it was going to be, and I do try and send my other staff to be there as points of contact, so let the blokes get on and do the work that need to do the work. Let's have some people there to have that face-to-face conversation. And I just let Michael pick up on the on the compensation element.
Yeah, thank you. And probably just to add to that as well, like what Russell's mentioned about power cuts, we are a heavily regulated industry, so we have focus every year to reduce not just the number of power cuts, but the length of those power cuts, and to build the UK resilience. We generally have had good performance over the past sort of 14 years, where power cut, both of those measures have come drastically down since 2010. So they generally are few. Of course, I appreciate the irony of saying that when we've come to a meeting to talk about power cuts. They do still happen in instances like this. I think with the mobile phones, I think that's something that we can pick up. Councillor Suggett has helpfully suggested a meeting between us and a number of officers within the council, and I think actually with the emergency planning manager for the council, we can also talk about how we can work to try and improve resilience. I think it is a matter of lobbying the infrastructure providers of the telephony infrastructure to consider things like battery backup, and it's the same thing with water utilities, for example. In some areas, the water utilities also have pumps in rural areas to pump water to residential areas uphill. If there's a power cut, those can go off, which means that people can be without water, and we do a lot of conversations with Anglian Water and other utility companies to also highlight those areas at risk, because if there's a power cut, that will have knock-on effects. So I think that's certainly something we can pick up with the council in a future meeting. On the compensation element, we're governed by the Ofgem guaranteed standards payments, which there's a range of criteria from people being off for more than 12 hours. Domestic and residential properties have different elements of how much we'll pay within that. There's a number of other measures, such as how many times the property has been without power. So if it's been without power for more than 3 hours on 4 separate occasions, we'll make a payment as well. I can certainly look into, if you've got any residential property or postcodes, we can look into the individual regions. The only reason that would be acceptable is if those weren't eligible because they hadn't met certain thresholds. But I can certainly take this online and look into the individual ones.
And just on the back of that, we do try to be more proactive with regards to making the payments. On a situation like we had at Gressonall and Beatley, the discussions we had, I say, with the back office teams and the care support teams locally within UK Power Networks, was I want these payments to be made. So let's be proactive and give the payments. Let's not wait to be asked to then make the payment. So we identified the customers that have been impacted. Excuse me. And then so on that point, I would have hoped that the proactive nature of that meant the customers got their payments without asking. But it's proves always in the conversations that you have on a more local level.
Thank you. Robert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Your map of Breckland doesn't include the major power upgrade at Thetford. Is that outside your area because it's fed from Barnham?
No, I didn't put any. I tried to focus in more resilience and improvements on that slide. So we have got, as you say, a new primary substation being built for Kingsfleet in Thetford, and that, without a shadow of a doubt, comes under my remit. We've got the primary substation was commissioned last year at Snetterton to pick up the load from the industrial park there. And there's also some work we're starting to do for Attleborough, a reinforcement. So we're reinforcing the 33,000 volt lines, and also putting a third grid transformer in at the grid substation in Norwich that will provide the proposed developments at Attleborough. I deliberately didn't put the load related parts on there, and also they're not just funded by UK Power Networks. They're funded by a mixture of private investors, Homes for England as well. So that's why I didn't put that on the slide.
Thank you, Robert. Linda, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to start off with a thank you, picking up on the point Roger made. A couple of Christmases ago, Shipton went through a dreadful time, and I cannot tell you how grateful the residents of Shipton were for A, the response, and B, the very speedy compensation they all got, that they were very happy with. But on the back of that, I've joined the priority register for text and updates with what's happening. I just wondered what proportion of eligible public had signed up to that, because sometimes actually a bit of knowledge up front helps people get prepared. I'll go and find the torch or boiler, kettle or water is. So I'd just be interested in that statistic, please.
So yes, certainly we actually monitor priority services register take up by council area. It's an average of around 40 to 50% of eligible people on the register. So and we hold our own register, and that requires people updating their details. Every year we do a data accuracy exercise. We send an email out or a text message out, say, are your details correct, to make sure we've got the up-to-date number, email address, everything like that. We also work with energy suppliers, because energy suppliers also, when you maybe change energy suppliers or your existing supplier, they also provide the data through data sharing agreements to try and increase that. But there always will be people who've just moved into the area, that moved addresses, that sometimes don't believe that they are eligible, so they may not feel vulnerable in a power cut, but we they are eligible to sign up. So we would always, if there's any opportunity to work with the council to promote that, or councillors, we've got text that we can supply to help promote the PSR. It's completely free as well, so we don't try to sell anything, we don't charge anything for being on it. Everything we provide is paid for by the company, so everyone can have peace of mind. It's not some sort of selling exercise, so it can exactly help. I think the only challenge we have is when there's unplanned power cuts, so from trees coming down on the lines, we won't necessarily know about that in advance. So as soon as that happens, then we'll communicate with them. You can actually, anyone can register on our website. We have a link, so anyone can actually register their home postcode to receive those text message updates. So you don't just have to be on the priority services register. So if you just want to know if your property's gone off, I can also supply the link further on so that anyone can sign up just to get those updates should a power cut occur. But yeah, it's around 40 to 50%. I can actually get the accurate number for Breckland District Council area and send it after this meeting.
Thank you, Linda. Any further questions, please? No. So just pulling that together then, there's a couple of different issues there. I'm a firm believer that residents know their communities best, and if I'm out walking the dog and I see a tree that's looking dangerous and might take out a line, I want to be proactive and tell you guys. Some clarity on how we do that, I think, would be really useful, certainly for councillors to share with parish councils or residents groups. You guys can't be everywhere, and we want to use local knowledge as much as we can to prevent. I think prevent is key. So that would be really useful. And then also for us as councillors, if you are doing work in our ward, in our area, about improving communication so that we are aware when you guys are coming down to do some of this work, so that we can cascade that information out. I think that would be really useful to open up that sort of two-way communication. We've heard about the priority take-up, which I think actually is something we can help with. I mean, I'll certainly, if I get that information, I'll certainly take that to the groups that I'm involved in, and I'm sure lots of other members will. And also, you mentioned earlier about fuel poverty support. I had no idea about that. Gladly take any information. We run a fuel bank in the community centre where I'm based, so again, any support like that. But what started as a relatively negative situation, poor old Gressenhall and Beatley without power, actually I think if this stimulates some conversations between UKPN, the council and councillors, I think actually there's some real positives that could come from this. Okay, so there's a few actions there, and we'll sort of follow up after the meeting and take it from there. But very grateful to hear the news about the investment, and it seems like things are progressing well. So thank you for coming and sharing that with us. Thank you. Right, I'm aiming to finish by 1 o'clock, folks, just so you know. We've got item 13 left as the main items, which is the Finance Performance and Projects Report for Q3. We've got both Alison and Phil here. Is there anything particular in the report that you want to bring attention to? Who'd like to go first?
Looks like I'm going first. 2 points, really. Firstly, on the projects, there are no changes advised by Paul Hewitt, who unfortunately can't be with us today. But he suggests that come Q4, you'll see some movement and change in that area. And as far as the finance aspect of the Q3, we have discussed this before. It's been to Cabinet, it's been to Council, and I think the reasons and rationale behind some of the shifts in where our budget was anticipating us going and where we are now well known. And again, hopefully we'll see a little bit firming up towards the end of the year through the Q4. But of course, as I've said many times before, the significant differences which are in the papers are essentially matters that are completely outside of our direct control. So temporary housing costs, for example, the fall off in planning income as a result of external pressures. And the other one, of course, is the gate fee charges for the MRF as well, which have pushed us into a negative position. That said, we have seen some improvements in our finances as a consequence of the double-edged sword of inflation, because with our investments, our returns on those investments have shown a better return than we might have anticipated when interest rates were incredibly low. So that's actually helped to balance the books as well. But if there are any questions, please ask. There's not a great deal I can add to what we've already discussed in other forum. Thank you, Chairman.
Lovely. Thank you, Phil. Alison, anything you want to add?
Well, I think most of you have heard it before, but I'll just remind you there's pleasing data in Q3 performance. Improvements in metrics, the number of bins missed for collection is now back to the expected levels. A couple of areas are challenging. Website accessibility, which is being sorted out with our new website, which is being redesigned, and mandatory training completion. If you remember, I talked to you before about the fact that the metrics were measuring people who just started. There's no way they can do the training just like that. So basically the metrics are being reviewed, and we're going to be bringing new ones back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions on Q3? Harry.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Phil and Alison. The areas I'm going to cover are not around the finances. Some of it's about the progress number of areas. I'm very happy, bearing in mind the time constraints as we get towards one, to not just for me to be written to, but also other members of the Commission. One is around looking at the projects and the dashboard, as well as the appendices. I noticed that again, these have been brought up before, the car park strategy looks to have gone from April 25, now moved to September 25. So I welcome to comment on that in the future. More information, I think, around partly intriguing about solar panels on the Elizabeth House car park. There's a sort of bit of a gap there. And also in Appendix A, Section 2, there's reference there to the non-expenditure of 250k because waiting for the empty housing policy, empty homes policy rather, to be agreed. The final item is on performance 3. Again, I know we've discussed this before. This is around disabled facility grants, and it just bears worth repeating. I know some of this is outside the direct control of Breckland, where again it says all urgent priority cases are completed within the guidelines, etc., timescales. It then says other cases experience delays due to lack of funds. And again, I know that the council has been pressing for changes in the methodology or additional funds, but it's a case worth mentioning again and keep repeating, because I know that we have stated at Breckland that we're not going to put any more of our own funds in. Therefore, it's imperative that we keep up the pressure on central government as we've been doing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm quite keen that we have a sort of deeper look at the performance and projects report for Q4. So if I take it that you've just sort of given the Cabinet members early notification of your questions, and they'll be able to answer them next time rather than... Oh, very good. Conscious of time. Roger, anything specific that needs to be raised now?
Yeah, so quickly, two things. One, I see big variance in planning, building control, and this blessed nutrient neutrality thing. What have we budgeted in terms of this for the forthcoming year? Because I can't see this situation improving greatly any time soon. Government, I'm sure somebody here needs to be telling government that this is having a serious impact on the council's finances, as well as indeed it's having a serious impact on construction businesses and developers locally. So that's my first question is, what allowance have we got to mitigate that in the forthcoming year? And also the housing benefit claims. I mean, this just goes on and on and on. And the old adage definition of a fool is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So what plans have we got? The only way I can see you're going to change this is we've got to increase the housing supply specifically for emergency accommodation, etc. What plan has the council got in place to change the dynamic on this and save us this revenue money every year? Any answers on that, please?
Some of them, yes. I can answer some of them. Others can answer other bits. So in terms of nutrient neutrality, you'll be aware that it's not just this council that's taking action to try and resolve that problem. Other councils in Norfolk are doing what they can. And at the same time, through things like the District Council Network, Local Government Association and MPs, there's a lobby at Westminster to say, let's get rid of that legislation which is forcing the nutrient neutrality on us in the first place. Because it's a little bit like a left hand and a right hand, where one hand says we want more housing, another hand says you can't have it. Yet there's a demand, and that's something over which we have no direct control, and indirectly we are doing what we can to resolve it locally and also influence and lobby nationally. As far as the budget is concerned, because of the effect that it's had, and it is dramatic, as you can see from the figures, we have reduced and will be reducing the prospective income from planning, and it's not the planning service per se, because we have significant numbers of planning applications coming in. It is actually the very large applications, the majors, which actually, as we all know, are both caught up with the nutrient neutrality trap and at the same time give us the biggest bang for their bucks in terms of planning fee income. So we have taken steps to reduce that, and I can't give the actual figures as yet, but that will come out in the wash. The second thing about temporary accommodation, temporary accommodation is something which is almost intrinsically linked in part to the first question, because without the houses we don't get the affordable homes being built, which actually helps to create additional housing demand which can be met. But in terms of temporary accommodation, we have plans in foot, and I think Steve James, who's sitting opposite us, can probably give you a more fulsome answer on that one. Roger. Steve?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to firstly just jump back and Councillor Clark mentioned disabled facilities grants, and I think we've been clear in our position in terms of our lobbying of central government. So just to confirm to this Commission that a couple of weeks ago I attended the DLUC parliamentary inquiry at Oxford City Council, where I of course lobbied that inquiry for the position which we've set out as a district. In terms of temporary accommodation, Councillor Attawell's of course right, a very pressing challenge that it faces our budget, and I think not just our budget, to a greater degree around the country, other councils are experiencing this. What have we done? Well, to date we've proactively purchased properties around the district in order that we're able to lower the costs of housing benefit, lowering the costs of temporary accommodation to our budget, and of course as Councillor Cowan says, the building of affordable properties is the long-term solution to this.
Thank you. I would add, Roger, that the May meeting of the Commission is the Cabinet Member for Strategic Planning, so I suspect nutrient neutrality might come up then as part of the conversation, so we might want to have a wider discussion about that then as well. I don't see anybody else indicating on item 13. Thank you, Alison and Phil, for updating on that. Move on to item 14, task and finish groups. We indicated at a previous meeting that we wanted to consider setting up a new task and finish group to look at the availability of support for residents across the district, and Ruth kindly sent out an email invitation to all members to see who would like to join that task and finish group. The names that I have are David Wickerson, Terry Land, Roger Atwell, Judy Anscombe and Linda Turner. Is there anybody else that would like to join that task and finish group, please? Harry Clark.
For clarification, I don't think the Commission has actually voted on whether they want a task and finish group.
I'll be honest, I can't remember what the decision was last time, and I haven't got the minutes in front of me, but I think the indication was, the vote that was taken was to set up the task and finish group with terms of reference to be determined.
I thought that was overridden by the fact that in the budget there was extended funding that wasn't going to be available, but it might
I'll
be
just
wrong.
ask Sarah to check the minutes to see what the decision was from the last meeting.
There was certainly no decision at the last the special meeting.
There was a vote taken. I can't remember what the vote was. See, I've signed my copy of the minutes and handed them back, so I don't have them now. Thank you. Members voted in agreement to investigate forming a task and finish group, and further information would be sent to members and the chairman would report back at the next meeting. So the vote was in agreement to investigate forming a task and finish group. What I'd like to do is to read what I would suggest are the terms of reference, and then members can decide and vote on whether you do want to form the task and finish group based on those terms of reference. So 1, to scrutinise the range of support services available to residents in the Breckland district. We've started that today. 2, to explore opportunities for improved partnership working and collaboration. And 3, to consider opportunities for a greater focus on preventative measures. Are members happy to accept those terms of reference, and in doing so accept the creation of the task and finish group? Those in agreement, please show. Those against? Thank you very much. So there will be no task and finish group formed. Moving on to item 15, outside body feedback. Does anybody have any?
I did distribute earlier this morning the agenda and minutes for the Norfolk Health Overview and the Scrutiny Committee. I have nothing currently to report on museums or records. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 16, scrutiny call-ins. There are none. Item 7, councillor call for action. I see none. Item 18, the work programme. Does anybody have any comments, please, on the work programme tabled in the agenda? Linda, please.
I've noticed that the 2 items we put forward from GP are still to be confirmed, but I would like to see them in a work programme within 12 months of that decision we made, please.
So we are about at the end of the programme that Ruth and I put together way back in the sort of summer last year. There's been a couple of new items requested, those being some of them. So Ruth and I need to sit down and work out the schedule moving forward, which we will do, and I'll have a chat with you about when best to bring those ones forward. But there's been a couple of other requests. If anybody else has a suggestion, not necessarily now, please do throw it into the mix and we can bear that in mind when we have our conversation. Moving on, the last item then is item 19, which is the date of the next meeting. The next scheduled meeting is the 30th of May 2024. Thank you very much for attending what's been a very long but hopefully informative meeting. Meeting closed.